All right, welcome to North Georgia Advocate Podcast 24. We're here leading into the runoff election from the primary with special guest Tyler Crawford. We're going to go over a lot of things today, pretty much primarily most of, what his goals are and how he's going into the primary and a lot of things that are going on extracurricular wise in the campaign that nobody expected. So a lot of stuff's come out since in the last few weeks, and we're going to touch a little bit of that today. Tyler, thanks for coming on and tell us your thoughts about did the general election go the way you kind of thought it would, and how are you proceeding from here?
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you guys again for having me. It was great to be on the program. And like I said, the last time, you guys are doing what nobody else is doing in the space right now. So it's really cool to be a part of it. But the general election, I didn't know what to expect at all, man. I had a bunch of people that were like, how do you think you're doing? And it's hard because, the people that you talk to, your circle, obviously everyone's like, oh yeah, I voted for you. And I told my friend and they told their brother and they told whatever. So like, you don't hear from the people that are not voting for you. You don't really hear from them just kind of the generic sense. And so, it's hard to really kind of grasp where I was. I've never run for anything before. I'm not really kind of a known quantity. So I really had no clue where I was going to land. Like I thought I was going to do pretty well. I thought there was a decent chance that I would make it into a runoff. But I did not expect to win, honestly, or at least get the most votes. And so that part was really cool. The single biggest thing on that was, it was nice to see a return on all the work. So, I kind of tell people, like, when I started door knocking last summer, the county made it really easy for me to pick where to go. Cause basically I was just ambulance chasing. So like, when they had an application on Ben Parks the first time for a neighborhood, basically everybody on that road was ticked off. So I just walked the entire road. I was like, yeah, this application is stupid. They should have just laughed them out of the room. And so when you go to people's doors like that, the good part is people are like, oh, thank God there's somebody here that wants to fight against it and take my information, my email and all that stuff. So that part was great. The only downside is that you talk to people forever. So like I remember there were times, there was like a Saturday where like I only talked to 4 people. And I was like, okay, it's just going to take me another 50 years to talk to everybody in District 3 if I do this. And so Ben Parks was the first one. And of course that's in Big Hickory. So I was glad to see that I won Big Hickory precinct because that's where Ben Parks was. And then of course, Jake Kent, George Barnes, Wade Welchel, Hubert Stevens, kind of that area where I had been walking for like 2 months. That area turned out, and I think I won that area by, it wasn't a much. I think it was 20 or 30 votes, something like that. But to see that I won was great. And then the other one, of course, was more recently started walking. Basically what I did is I looked at the North Hall Community Center, and I just made a radius. So I was like, what is the closest neighborhood to the North Hall Community Center? Because like those people are definitely going to vote. Like if you drive by the North Hall Community Center like every day, it's highly likely that you're going to find the time to be able to just kind of breeze in there and then go through early voting. So that's where I ended up the first time. So it was Highland Gate subdivision. And then it was like River's Edge, I think was the next one out. Then Deerfield Estates. And there's so many neighborhoods here as of late. But the idea is I mapped out, like I said, the neighborhoods that were the closest to the North Hall Community Center and then kind of broke up in that. So that's why I was also glad to see that I won Quillians, because Quillians is where that area is, right? So Quillians, Big Hickory, that's where I spent most of the time in. So it was nice to see the return on that. And then oddly enough, the one we talked about that's kind of odd is Candler. I only know like a couple people in Candler, and I won Candler by, 40 or 50 votes, something like that. So it was very interesting to see the Candler precinct. I feel like I have a good friend of mine. I do have one friend down there that I've known for a while, and I do feel like he stumped for me pretty well. I mean, he took a couple signs. He's like, man, I'm gonna go tell my friends. I'm gonna do all this stuff. So I have to probably give him the credit for that, just because I hadn't spent any real amount of time down there, just because it's so far away from my house. I mean, it's the furthest precinct from my house. And but I have started actually this past week. I have had some help down there. So I went door knocking with some people for the first time. I've not had anybody help me yet. And so like in that context, So it was kind of neat to door knock, where it's not just yourself at that point. You get so many more houses knocked out, obviously. But to have that capacity is really nice. People, I think when people saw that I actually got the most votes, I did have a lot of people that were like, they were either Steve people, Steve Gailey supporters, or I think maybe I had some people that were like waiting to see if I was actually going to get anywhere. Like, hey, I like this guy, but I don't know if he's actually, if he's going to get any votes, right? So I feel like I had some of those people too that were potentially waiting to see if I did actually like get a return for the amount of work that I had. So, in both of those contexts, I think I've had some people reach out to me that have been extremely helpful on like kind of the nuts and bolts, I guess, of the campaigning, because everything right now has just been like fake it till you make it, right? Like I don't know anything really. So I'm just doing what I think makes sense. But to have some people that have actually run a campaign before, that they've been a candidate before, of course, Steve, since he's run before. So there's a little bit of like almost like an intellectual like database or resource that I have now that I can reach out to, which is really nice. But yeah, I didn't expect to come out with the most votes. Nice to see. I felt like that from the amount of work that I've done, that it was like, okay, if it lines up with the amount of work, then yes, I feel like that I would be in first. But to see that result was extremely rewarding for sure. So, and then basically just doing more of the same, right? It's just we just talked about this, but when you have a lot of money in a campaign, you tend, I feel like the default setting is to kind of go away from the personal interaction, where you're kind of content with spending money, whether that's mailers or texting or whatever. And part of the reason why I haven't had to fill out anything on the Declaration of Intent for $2,500 is like I didn't know what I was going to spend it on. So like I wasn't asking anybody for money. I didn't know what I was going to spend it on. I was like, to me, the message is the most important part. So, so it was like I just didn't feel a real conviction to try and get money and to spend money and do all that stuff. So, I still like that idea. I'm still a subscriber to the door knocking thing. There's a couple candidates that really do that and like really, really advocate for that. They're both state level people. So like Josh Clark is one. And then a friend of my mom's, actually, a lady named Charlize Bird, who is a state rep, Cherokee County. And they're both on that, like, just get out there, just talk to people, just go where people are, talk to them, see what the problems are. But at this point, I feel like we kind of know what the problems are. We're just getting out there the word that, like, yes, people are aware of what your problems are. There's a lot of overlap there with people that are in North Hall and East Hall. But I think that the message right now is like, we know what we can do about it, right? So like, we know what the problems are, but here's the solutions. So like, it's not just a generic, like, oh yeah, overdevelopment or whatever, like the specific problems with the comprehensive plan, with the steering committee, with all the stuff, we've talked about before. We know how to fix those now, right? Like, we know what the plan is. We just have to actually follow through. Oh, now freeze again? Okay, froze for a second.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so just the specificity of doing that. So again, it's the messaging. So like, how do you, and I've had that problem too. But like, how do you boil, distill, however you want to word it? Like, how do you distill somewhat complicated topics into just bullet points that make sense for a mailer or a flyer? So like, that's another part of why I didn't really want to waste money on it or spend money on it. Cause it was like, we just had this conversation last night with a lady on Facebook, right? That was like, You're too long, you're too wordy, you had too much stuff, you had too much slides. And it was like, they're kind of complicated problems. I mean, like, you can't just be like, yeah, this is a problem. Like, this is why it's a problem, right? This is why it's important. This is every step of what they did to distort what was supposed to happen. So
right. Well, and you look at the flyers, I mean, that's expensive.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking one mailer could run you $8 or $10 grand if you do the whole District 3. I mean, people don't understand how big District 3 is.
Apparently it's
Tanner Highway all the way to Big Hickory out in Maryville. I mean, that's almost half the county.
Yeah. Corey's example was always Parks Lumber to like Hopewell Baptist Church or whatever. He's like, how long would that take you to drive between those two? It's a big gap. So, and then like, just like you said, apparently, the SuperPAC is claiming that they spent like $46 something $1,000 or whatever, on mailers. So, I mean, it's like, okay, and then most of those people that wrote me back were like, yeah, hey, I saw it. It went in the trash, but, hey, I saw your mailer. I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad they spent $40,000 so that you saw something for 5 seconds.
And I didn't get anything from the SuperPAC.
I didn't either. I've never gotten anything. I never got a mailer. They claim they did text messaging, right? I never got a text. They claim they did digital media. Where is the digital media? Like, it's still to me a money laundering thing. I still really believe that, like, they're telling people that they spent this money, but they spent $10,000 or they spent $15,000. I still think it's money laundering.
Well, that SuperPAC, the private property services or whatever it's called, and they've got a third-party group out of Iowa that does most of their stuff. And I started looking at their finances on the FEC website, and like 40% of the money that the SuperPAC gives that company goes in their pockets for operating costs.
It's super creepy, man. It's like it's a 501c4 that collects the money, and then it goes to the SuperPAC, and then it gets spent with a singular LLC. Right. And it's like the whole thing just reeks of being shady. I mean, you look at it and you're like, dude, this is. I mean, obviously that's why it carries the moniker dark money, right? Because it's just really slimy. You once you look at the process, you're like, dude, this is, don't want any part of it. And that's the unfortunate part, right? Even if you don't want a part of it, you're going to be a part of it because you're a candidate. So, well,
and most people don't realize that you have no say so over it.
Yep.
They could come out and trash you just as well as they do support you. And they could make up lies, and then you've got to turn around and spend your money out of your pocket to counteract those lies. I mean, you may not locally, but if you get into a state or a federal race, I mean, you've got to counteract that stuff somehow.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you never look at something the same way again, right? So, like, if you ever see a mailer and it says on the bottom, not authorized by a candidate or candidates committee, then right? It's like, okay, these people didn't have any contact potentially at all with somebody. So it's like now anytime you see a mailer, now I know what to look for. So I guess the silver lining is this, it's information for the future on how it works. But, and this is something that we talked about several times, which is like nobody has, as far as I know, nobody has seen this on a local county level yet. Like this is the first time here in Georgia that we've had a SuperPAC at the local county level. So, there was one of the commissioners had talked to their county attorney, another one of the commissioners, because that's another part we talked about. There was 12 people on the list that this PAC allegedly spent money on. And so, and 8 of them were current county commissioners. And so one of those 8, they reached out to their county attorney. Another one of the 8 reached out to ACCG. Nobody had seen a SuperPAC at the local level like this yet. So we're kind of in the leading edge of SuperPAC money coming all the way down. Like you said, it was at the federal level, it's at the state level. Now we're getting into local level, apparently, SuperPAC stuff, which is wild.
And every one of them was tied to data centers.
Mm.
As well as I do, because I kept you in the loop, kind of. I took it upon myself to I went down a rabbit hole for about 2 or 3 days trying to find out as much as I could about this stuff. And once you dig past their federal filings, there's really not much information to be found about anything that they do, what they support, the people that are involved. You can find basic information, but you don't know what they do. You don't know whether they're crooks. You don't know whether they're, you know nothing about them.
Yep. Yeah, that was the only commonality there. And then, of course, like we talked about, is how did it come up? It's such a weird way, like, for it to kind of come out. Of course, obviously, it's kind of a hit piece, right? Is that, when it came out kind of before Election Day, it's weird that I'm tied in with Kathy in this. That's another part where you didn't have control over, right? So, like, you didn't have control over the SuperPAC, and now I don't have control over the fact that I'm tied with Kathy in this manner. But the ultimate point there was that when the data center tie-in, it's like, how do you even get on their list? Like, how did that even happen? Like, what was it? And obviously we had the thing where all the counties that were targeted had either they had a withdrawn application, or they had one that was kind of floating out there with their commission or development authority. So we know that part of it, right? Like we know that tie-in. But then the other part of that was like, how did it come out? Because, you know, and I posted this last night, you know, if you go onto the state ethics commission, like their filings, you can't find us because we're not state level candidates. So like if you type in Tyler Crawford in the, you know, the state filing commissions, I don't come up in anything. My name's not there, and none of the commissioners' names are there because we're not state employees. Or not state candidates. The only way that you can find us is to know that the private property PAC, you have to know that we're in their PDF filing. And so that's another weird facet of this is like you basically had to know that it was there, right? Like you had to know somebody that was either part of that PAC, or you have to be in that kind of, I guess, if you want to call it like the kind of sphere or ecosystem, whatever, that PAC thing. So you had to have somebody that was inside that world to know that it was there. So again, it's very odd because when I reached out to all the other commissioners, nobody had known anything. Like nobody knew that it already went through, you know, like we posted on there, you know, more than half the commissioners, they didn't even know they even had a response. You know, it was like in a spam folder, or it was like I don't know who this number is, whatever. So a lot of the response was, I don't even know who these people are. And then they have to go actually look and they go, oh, I found the email, or, oh, I found the text message. So, you know, when you have $10,000, $20,000 spent on you and it went to your spam folder, it was like, what the heck? I mean, dude, like, so again, you know, if the candidates themselves didn't even know and nobody had a clue, you know, it's just the whole thing is just weird. There's still a lot of questions that are unanswered with it.
Well, and we were talking earlier, you know, and talking about it's going to end up getting to where you just got to go back to the grassroots campaign. And you may have to get back to like radio ads, or maybe even buy these freaking billboards that you see on Jesse Jewell or something that you know that's got your information on there and it's going to be seen every day. Like with me, I get a mailer, I just chunk it straight in the trash. I don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Now, if I'd have seen something with your picture on it, I'd have said, I didn't know Tyler was doing that, you know.
Yeah, and that's really the only reason that I even responded to them, because and now knowing what we know now, I never would have been offered an option on like what they could do, because then it's coordinated, right? So right. You know, the whole thing was coordinated. If you're coordinated with them, then you're breaking the law. You're breaking the federal regulation, right? So, you know, in my head, when they reached out to me about a mailer, in my head, I'm like, if they send me, you know, 100 or 200 little things that I can send out on my own, I'm not gonna mail them out. What I was gonna do with them is when I go door knocking, I was gonna leave it if somebody wasn't home. And because that's the one thing I feel like from the door knocking side of it, I don't have a great way of like, if I do talk to somebody, it's easy. Like I just leave them the card, it's got my contact information on it. But if you don't talk to somebody and all you have is a business card with your name and how to contact you, I do think that's potentially going in the trash too, because you don't have that connection with somebody. So that's why, I think the mailer, if you just mass mails things out without a connection, I just think a lot of that advertising is just trash. There's not a real reason for people to read or engage at all because they don't know you personally.
Right.
I think the mailers kind of only work on boomers at this point. Boomers who still just even.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so in my head was something like at least like I said, a piece of material that you could leave that had a couple bullet points that would be at least, okay, yeah, I agree with this guy, but you still have the contact information. So in theory, I guess so they wouldn't actually be mailers, but it never got any further than that, because when I asked for a sample, that's when I never heard from them again. And like I said, knowing what we know now, they couldn't provide a sample because I couldn't give them any kind of direction, and I couldn't do anything. So they were trying to cover themselves to make sure that, they weren't going to run afoul of the law. So, and that's as far as anybody got. There was only one other commissioner that he also asked for a sample, and we got as far as anybody had gotten. So, like I said, most of the time they didn't get a response. Yeah. So sorry, the internet keeps going out, but.
Yeah, no problem.
But, so Kathy's comments was she talked to him on the phone. She said she wasn't interested. Same thing that I think two other commissioners said. So, again, it's just a weird set of circumstances, but, we know now, I guess.
Now, what were you saying about the mailers, Bill?
Say that again?
I was saying the only people it probably even works on or actually read it are boomers.
Yeah, the boomers, yeah, they're the ones that still believe in that.
I think everybody else kind of just, you know, as soon as they don't even make it to my house. From the mailbox to the doorway, there's a trash can right there in the middle. So just
Yeah.
they get tossed. They don't even get read.
And one thing I want to bring up is I never thought this would be an issue, but I talked to several people that didn't vote for Corey because when he talked to them, he never specifically asked for their vote. He specifically just laid the case out there and had a good rapport with them. And he just kind of, like the younger generation, they don't really say, hey, will you please vote for me? Or I'd love, you know, they just kind of take it as an implied thing. And are you asking for the votes, or are you just telling them who you are and leaving it at that? I'm just trying to make a correlation here.
Yeah, and I think you talked about this with Steve, I think, right? I think yes. I in a weird way, I could see how that is maybe a generational thing, because like when I think about something like that in that context, my concern is that somebody thinks that I'm selling them something, right? So like I don't want to come across where the only reason that I talked to you was to like, I need your vote, right? Like I do generally care about like stuff that's out here. And I think that the videos that I made on that, hopefully people get that impression, right? Like we tried to fix a couple culvert problems, right? We tried to fix a handful of things. I'm currently trying to get somewhere with GDOT because GDOT is just dragging their feet on this turn arrow. So we're trying to get somewhere with GDOT on specifically the intersection at Lula Road, 52 and 365. I've been at people's houses where I pulled up a Acela like on my phone because they're like, I don't know how to fill out a permit, or I don't know where my permit is, like what my status is currently. So like I didn't ever really want a interaction like door knocking wise to seem like I only care about getting your vote and I'm out. Because I do hear that people complain about that. I think I know my wife was talking about they had some kind of event where she was at, and there were two candidates and they showed up and they ignored, because my wife works at a elementary school, and they ignored all of the kids and went straight to the parents there and were like, you know, hey, can I get your vote? I'm running for, you know, whatever office. And it was like, it just feels wrong to do that. You know, like I don't know.
Like they're out there panhandling.
Yeah. You know, it's like the only reason I'm talking to you is to get something from you. And that's not the reason why I'm talking to you. Like I'm generally interested to hear, you know, what your story is and why, you know, why does living here mean something to you? You know, like give me that whole thing. And that's why I usually end up, you know, I've said all the time, man, like when I go door knocking, sometimes I'm at somebody's house for 5 minutes and sometimes I'm at somebody's house for an hour. I mean, like I've seen that, like the last time I was in this dude's garage and he had a whole woodworking shop. And so we're getting the planer, we're getting the sawmill, we're getting all this stuff. And it's really cool. Like, it's awesome. Like, I love that stuff. Like, I love making things, which is why I do what I do. But, you know, you're in a whole situation where I've seen a guy's sawmill, right? And then, you know, the last time we went out, this guy had a 51 Chevrolet and a 62 Galaxy. And then he was restoring a 77 Bronco. And so I got in the whole thing with him. So like I interned at John Causey Racing Engines. So like I've done a lot of Ford stuff. And so
We might have lost him for good.
Yeah, I hope not.
Can you pause recording and like restart it later?
No, there's not a pause on here that I can see. There's just a stop and a start back. No, there we go.
But yeah, so the long story short was you have the capacity when you don't care about just getting their vote, you have the capacity to actually make a connection with somebody. And then I feel like that's not to say I don't bring up what I'm doing, right? So like I always say, hey, I am running for county commission, and I always bring up, hey, early voting is June 8th through the 12th. Election day is June 16th right now, right? So that's part of my spiel currently post election day on May 19th. So I do always bring that up, and that's a function of the conversation, but that's not usually what I lead in with. I usually lead in with the comprehensive plan problems, and it's great because the county's doing the comprehensive plan, like town halls. So I can be like, hey, like if you have any kind of problems with the development around you, we have an avenue right now for you to complain about it. So, and I also feel like once you open the door to somebody kind of telling you, yeah, I don't like this, or we've trashed this area or whatever, or I want to see this. I think it's also then easy to go, okay, well, we can actually do something about it. And how we do something about it is not only the comprehensive plan town halls, but then we got to be concerned with who's county commissioners. And, oh yeah, guess what? I'm also running for county commission. So I never lead in with like the like vote for me pitch. And sometimes you never get there. Sometimes people like, they're like, oh, you bothered me in the middle of dinner. Or I've had like 2 people actually get mad at their door. Oh, you woke me up, or you woke my husband up and he's on bed rest and whatever. Sorry, I didn't know. But so you don't always get to that. You don't always get to that level. That's the goal, obviously. But sometimes there's breaking off points where you don't actually make it all the way there.
Right. And I think a lot of it is you're resonating as you come across as, and these people, especially like me and Vero's talked about this a lot, we want commissioners and people that actually give a damn, that care. What we've got up there now is just robots that don't care about anything, and that's what Steve always hit at. Is when he was on the committee last time, the commissioners actually cared. They'd answer your phone calls, they'd answer your emails. They seemed genuinely vested in what you felt and what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I'd also say too, if you're going to look at it from a purely what do I get out of it standpoint, kind of like the can I get your vote kind of deal. I think if you have a real connection with somebody and you almost become friends within 30 minutes or so, I do think that and I've had this.
I'd have to get Starlink. Frozen in time.
Well, dang.
I know. Yeah, he may be gone for good this time.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with the 4G. I mean, you would think with the cell service it shouldn't be like that because it shouldn't be uninterrupted. There it is.
Sorry about that, man. Yeah, like I said, my connection is terrible.
Yeah, no trouble.
So hopefully I can pick back up there. If you have the capacity to make a real connection with somebody, the part of it that really works, and this is anecdotally, but I've met people that they're like, man, how can I help you? Like, give me a sign. I'm going to tell my friends, come by my work. Like I did that with a guy I met at Highland Gate. He's like, man, come by our shop here. So I went by their shop. I'm like, dude, if I ever get an invite to anything, I'm going to go. And, but I feel like if you generally care and you want to make the connection, like you don't get just a vote, you get like more than them, right? You get like their spouse, you get their family, you get their friend, like you actually have somebody that like is willing to kind of like, kind of go to bat for you. So it feels like the time spent is worth it. Like I said, it's hard from the context of we only have so much time right now. So, like I've always thought like, if I end up with a seat If I win here, I'm not going to stop doing it. Like I'll just keep going. Like we joked around before, it's like if it takes me 50 years to get to all of District 3, then we'll just keep going. It's like whatever. You already got the plan. You just keep going. And I also think too, I've talked to planning and staff about this, and I know I've talked to certainly you guys, and of course, kind of in that, if you want to call it the social media sphere. But I honestly, truly believe that if you just talk to people, you can get like 95% of the way to finishing a comprehensive plan. Like I really feel like a general average of what people's answers are to the comprehensive plan, you don't really even need to talk to the third party, because you can take what you had before and you can go, did this work? Do you like this? Do you have this? Like, I don't think you really honestly need to spend $300,000 redoing a comprehensive plan if you go talk to people. I think the general idea, like people know, like everyone that I've talked to, the average answer right now is like an acre lot or like 3/4 of an acre lot. Like when I ask what's the minimum lot size you'd want to see around you, that's what the answer is. And so it's like, that makes total sense because that lines up perfectly with R1. I mean, that's exactly what R1 is. And so, it's like R1 makes a lot of sense in a corridor to me. And I've said this before, R1L, if you're not in a corridor, so if you're on Ben Parks Road or you're wherever, R1L. But it's easy to come up with these answers when you get a decent sample size. And maybe that's what the point of the comprehensive plan is, right? Like maybe that's why they want to hear from as many people as possible. Because if you do hear from, 30-40% of the people, all your answers are already answered, or all your questions are already answered. So I think the more people you talk to, if you're an elected official, I think the better, because then it doesn't become about who shows up to the public hearing. You're already kind of know, like, and that's freeze out. I think that's a very important part of being in the capacity where you're able to make decisions from a land use side. Like if you've already talked to everybody, then you're already going to know where stuff's going to be very hard and people are not going to want to see it. Right. So like, if I'm sitting in the seat, if I'm county commissioner of District 3 and somebody comes back with a neighborhood application on 1/3 of an acre lots off Ben Parks Road, I'll be like, hey dude, everyone on this road is going to hate you. And like, expect to see a lot of people show up because nobody wants to see this stuff out here. Like people live out there because they want the larger lot sizes. So it makes you a better candidate, it makes you a better commissioner. The more understanding that you have of your kind of constituency of your district, I think it just makes you a better person in that context.
Well, you talk about getting the more people involved. I think Tuesday or Monday, whenever the meeting was, the executive session or whatever it was, they said that only 12 people had participated in the online commenting section. It's obvious that the people are not going to go to the technology. I mean, how do we fix that? Do we put out mailers? I mean, do they mail out the stuff and say, hey, fill this out and mail it back in, or fill it out and drop it off?
Man, we didn't talk out there. We did not talk about this prior to anything. So this is not a question, but this is such a T-ball. You put it right on the thing here. We're going to knock it out of the park. And the thing, I bring this up quite a bit, which is that the city of Flowery Branch, and hats off to everyone in the city of Flowery Branch, government, of course, our friend Charles Vanderbilt. And it's not just Charles, right? Charles he's always so good about saying, it's a team effort. So, Peter Luna, I know is one. I'm drawing a blank on everybody else's name here. But the city of Flowery Branch did it the exact opposite of what the county did. They sent all their people out. They did door knocking stuff. They went out there. They engaged with people. They went to all their little festival stuff, right? Anything that they could that was public, they tried to get out there and get it. And of course, they did the social media stuff. But the city of Flowery Branch, they have like 10,000 people, and they got like 900 people to respond to their comprehensive plan survey. And so, you got 9%, right? We did 0.03%. The city of Flowery Branch got more people to respond than the entire county did 3 years ago. So the answer to me seems pretty obvious. You have to go where people are. You have to go meet people where they are. And so, like you said, nobody, and that's the problem with my business cards, right? That's the problem. If I just leave my information at somebody's door, they're going to be like, what is this? Like, throw it away. And so, it's the same thing. It's all this is dovetailed so far, right? If you don't have connections with people, nobody's going to care about what you're doing. And so, like, you have to have that kind of personal interaction. you have to give, and I talked about this at the comp plan meeting. So we had one on Wednesday. Very few people were there, but I talked about this in the time for public comment at the end of it. And I said, we really have to convey why this is important, right? Like, it's not just like, hey, fill the survey out, look at these ordinances and give us our feedback. Like, we also have to explain why, right? So like, it's not enough to just put the QR code out there. We have to explain why it's important. And like, that's what I've tried to do and all the stuff, that's why I got a cease and desist letter. Like, when you put the pieces together of the puzzle, this is problematic. Like, people really, not nobody, but it's generally in the dark on why the comprehensive plan is important. Nobody really talks about it. And to me, it's by design, right? Like, they don't want you to know it's important. They don't want you to know Eastlands Incorporated versus Floyd County, 1979, that the comprehensive plan is basically if you don't meet the comprehensive plan, the commissioners are free to deny you whatever. It doesn't matter that some developer is going to say, well, I'm going to sue you. Get wrecked, because the comprehensive plan says you can't put it there. And we already have case law that says that we can uphold the comprehensive plan. And that's why they don't want you to know it's important. And so like, that's why we've got to do a better job explaining the why, and I hear that all the time, like in the corporate world, right? Like, what's your why? And we have to do that with everything. We have to do that with the comprehensive plan. We have to convey why it's important. And we have to convey this thing is setting us up for the next, at a minimum, 3 years. But in the maximum term, the comprehensive plan we currently have is through 2045. So it's like the next 20 years is what's on this thing.
Right. And I may be stupid, but why in the world would the elections board not allow them to put flyers out at the polling station where you're going to get more bang for your buck, per se? If you got 25% of the registered voters coming out to vote, at least that many is going to at least see the flyer, because that guy could say, hey, here's some information on our new comprehensive plan. Give it a look over. When you turn in your little card at the end, he could just hand you the piece of paper.
Yeah, and actually, we'll give credit where credit's due here, right? I don't want Greg to complain about it in a work session meeting, but he had a great idea. He brought this up in, it was a voting meeting, I guess, or a work session meeting. It was a fantastic idea. I mean, I think like it's an obvious answer once you think about it. The county should have something like, when you get your little peach, right? Like, I'm a Georgia voter. You also get a little card that says, here's when our dates are for the comprehensive plan. This is why it's important, right? Like, just quick bullet points, but you get two pieces. You're going to get the peach. You're going to get here's where our comprehensive plan is, the dates and times. Genius idea, really. Like I said, I have to give him credit. I mean, that's a fantastic idea. I mean, if people are already there, then why not?
Yeah, it just makes no sense. I mean, you want people involved. If you want people involved, that seems like the next logical step. But why would the Board of Elections say, no, we don't want to do that? We put the QR code up. I'm not going to stop and scan a QR code. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's like you said, it's the same conversation before. Nobody reads the flyers, nobody does whatever. It goes in the trash. I've also thought too, if we're going to get real outside the box here, it would be kind of cool to do some sort of like some of the prizes stuff. I don't think, because I don't necessarily want to spend government money on stuff like that, but almost like a rebate of like, if you fill the comprehensive plan out, and maybe it's like a referral thing, but we're going to take $100 off your property tax bill next year. Right. I mean, we only do the comprehensive plan renewals so often, right? So we only do them every 3 years. We only do a big one 7 years. So maybe it is something like that. Maybe we have an incentive where we're going to give you a credit on your property tax bill, $50, $100, whatever, something. But there's at least a tangible, like, you're going to get something out of this, right? So like, even if you haven't been paying attention, you haven't done whatever, there's a reason for you to do that now, right? So like, again, this is just kind of spitballing ideas. We're not, obviously we're not doing it.
And the thing is you talk about the QR codes at the election, they tell you don't even bring your cell phone in. You can't use your cell phone while you're voting, but then you're going to put a QR code out there. I mean, they don't think these things through. They have, I'm not knocking them because it's good intentions. It's just not well thought out.
Yeah, or if you're going to say that the QR code stuff's problematic and all that, then why don't you just bring the questionnaire there then? So like, here's the questionnaire on your way out the door. here and do the simple version, right? So just do the one that's like a single page, talk about all the heavy spots, talk about density, lot sizes. You can talk about maybe character areas. You can talk maybe about setbacks, but get all the big ones, right? Get the density size. Are we being overdeveloped? Where do you want to see development, if you want to see it at all? But just do a real, do the same questionnaire that I do door knocking, essentially, and then do it right there at the polling location. So that way you're hitting everybody. So that, then we don't, again, it's the personal contact, right? We don't need you to fill this thing, or we don't need you to get your phone out and scan the QR code. We're going to do it right here, right? So we're going to make sure while you're here, you're already here. You might as well. It's going to take a minute. Just do it that way, and just have somebody, or 2 people maybe at every polling location. Be like, hey, look, we really want your feedback, and maybe we do the same thing. Maybe we'll give you a shirt or a hat. We do the same thing. I'm sure tonight they're probably going to have that at the block party thing. But we did awesome shirts. We did the coolest shirts the county has done. They did at the Lyman Hall Day. It had the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So Lyman Hall is in the back for Georgia. And so do that, give out a shirt or give out a hat or give out whatever, you can make it enjoyable. And I think that's, part of the thing we talked about on the why. Some of that stuff is boring. I'm not going to lie. The ordinance stuff, I like it. And I said this Wednesday too. I was like, everyone in here are nerds, man. It's Jody's in there. Chris Slate was in there. And then it's staff. Tim Ader was in there. Kind of the normal kind of voting meeting crew, and we're nerds, so of course we're going to be there, of course we're going to follow this stuff, but we're the very, very end of the bell curve, right? So if you're going to hit all the people in the middle of the bell curve, you need to not only convey why, but you got to go meet people where they're at. So, and that looks like being at the polling location. That's a no-brainer. Maybe you should have one at Lyman Hall Day too, right? Or there's a thing tonight. There's a block party tonight. Show up tonight with the questionnaires from the comprehensive plan, the same thing that you're going to do next Tuesday. Do that tonight. Whatever.
Yeah. And
so you think this is kind of something that needs to be pushed towards or pushed by the commissioners, by the sitting commissioners, but then you have multiple commissioners that are in the real estate industry that don't necessarily want public's opinion. So maybe it's not so much of a, we want to pretend like we want some input from the public, but not really. So let's make it the hardest way possible. So like you said, it's by design. Is it by design? Is it hey, the staffers being told, hey, don't, or maybe they're not being told to hey, don't do it like this, don't do it like this, but they're also not being pushed to be, hey, go out there and do this. Hey, go out there and let's send some people out, etc. Because I feel like it starts at the top, right? You got to be the ones to set the plan in motion.
Yeah, you're on it 100%, man. It has to be a top-down thing, right? And I've done that in my own, again, anecdotally. I worked. This is going to be kind of you guys are going to think this is weird, this reference here, but I worked for a band program, and the director was not really interested in being a great program, and so when you're in kind of middle management and you're trying to push upper management into doing stuff that you want to see done, it's almost impossible. It's an immovable object. And the reason why is they set the tone. It's everything you just said. They're setting the tone. They set the schedule. They set all the things. So if you're going to change the intentionality of Hall County government, it has to start at the top. There's 5 people that are responsible for setting the direction for Hall County government. And you can't rely on staff to do that. I mean, those people get paid pretty well, but ultimately they can only get as far as what the commissioners want them to do. And so if you don't set that direction and you don't set that almost like corporate ethos, just that, a culture of being intentional about things, yeah, you're going to get mediocrity. I mean, that's what we have right now. Everything's, not everything, but when things are mediocre, it's because either nobody cares about it or it's intentional. Like you said, that's what it feels like to me, is we want this to be boring, or we want this to be obscure or hard to digest or deal with. And we want that because we don't actually want feedback.
Well, we hit on this last week, and I think it goes a step higher. I think it goes up to the county administrator, Zach Pro, and his job, because last year and the year before during SPLOST, he was at every neighborhood going around campaigning for SPLOST, which is against the law. He claimed he was doing it on his personal time. But, you know, why can't they do that for the comprehensive plan? Have these meetings, go to Sterling on Lanier, go to these places. If he gets involved, then the commission pretty much kind of has to, you know, it kind of puts pressure on them to where, hey, by God, if he's doing it, we need to do it.
Yeah, and then of course there's the obvious answer to why they would put effort behind SPLOST is because it grows their budget, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, then they can spend more money, then they've got more projects, then they need more people, then they that's how you grow government, right? You get more. You're the goldfish in the bowl, right? So
And it was going so well. Yeah, you're back. Yeah, no trouble.
good, man, I'm telling you. So trying to pick up where we left off here. So the government is the goldfish in the bowl. Whatever bowl you give it, it's going to grow. Right. So however much money you give it, it's always going to spend. It's always going to add people. It's always going to grow. Like that is their goal, is to grow. And so that's why it has to come from the top, because you have to set a culture where we're not going to do the 2 to 3% thing every year, man. We're not going to just keep spending more and more money. We're going to figure out how we can basically do everything that we can cheaper than what we're doing it right now, ideally, right? So like my intent, and I think our goal from the commissioner side of it, is not to spend 2 or 3% more every year, but can we cut? I don't know if we can cut 2% a year. I don't know, but it'd be nice. But can we cut every year? Can we actually go the other way with this thing? I don't know that anybody up there is asking that.
Well, and we've talked with Steve about this, and he's putting his support 100% behind you, and I think that's going to help you a lot up in his areas. But he's talked about going to zero-based budgeting. You start out at zero, then you budget what you need, and that's one way to get things back to the basics. He said the other day he had talked to somebody, there's 200 jobs that are budgeted for in the budget that are unfilled. How is that possible for a county that's the size of Hall County?
Yeah, and Steve, I love talking to Steve on that, because he has such an inside, since he's been there, done that. He that side of the county government and the operations, the personnel side of it, man, you can get him going on that, and he knows a lot. Obviously, in that context, he knows kind of how the game is played, how they kind of stack the deck with positions that aren't real positions. I'd also say too, because I don't want to steal his thunder on that stuff, but I'd also say too, when we talk about kind of doing things more efficiently, there's also another part of it that's really interesting that I don't know that it gets a lot of limelight on it, but there are ways to do things that are cheaper than how we're doing them right now. It's just you have to be intentional about doing them. We seem so non-bothered by spending just dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars on things where you could have really done the same thing without spending any money had you actually just been intentional about doing it. And of course, the easy example, I can't remember if we talked about this last time. The easy example was the $60,000 on bottled water. You don't need that, right? So you're going to save that money right off the bat. But there's in every little thing, and I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but there was an application recently, not an application. There was a work session agenda item, and it was spending money at Cherokee Bluff Park for they were going to remove the wooden mulch, and they were going to pour rubber down there, and basically so that the whole bottom surface was going to be rubber now instead of wooden mulch. And their context was that the rubber mulch is going to hold up longer, which is great, right? So let's do the thing that, if we look at the lifespan of this, is going to save us money in the long run. Because if we're redoing rubber mulch or we're redoing wooden mulch, we're going to spend that cost every year to replace it, right? We replace the rubber mulch once every 20 years or whatever. We can do cast in pieces. And so that wasn't a problem. The problem that I had with it is part of that request for quote, or part of that contract, was we were going to spend money. I think it was like $4,500. Part of that contract was for the removal of the mulch. So we were paying that company to remove and gather and then dispose of the wooden mulch. And so the idea is like, dude, that stuff, I bet if you posted on Hall County government and you said, hey man, we're going to give away as much wood and mulch as you guys want, I bet you'd have a bunch of people show up on a weekend for wood and mulch around that park. Or maybe you take it to the government center or whatever, like, or you can figure out a way to
repurpose it.
Yeah. And so like, you know, it's just things like that where it's like, it was easy to spend the $81,000 for the total contract, but we could have saved $4,500 just in that one contract if we had been smarter about getting rid of wood and mulch.
And yeah, no doubt. And Vera, what was it we brought up on our last podcast? Something like $300,000 just to replace the lighting on one floor of the courthouse.
Oh yeah. That was one of the items.
When we're fixing to spend $150 million on a new courthouse,
yeah,
dudes, put up with the bull crap for another couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on, why do we got to spend that money?
Well, that's the thing is like they have to spend it because then they have a justification of, oh, well, we need more because we ran out of what you gave us last year.
Yeah, and that's the thing with SPLOST too. That's a big problem that I have with SPLOST is that when you know the final amount of SPLOST, like, you know, like all the departments are told you have X amount of dollars. You have to tell us how you're going to spend it, but ultimately you have this amount. Then in my opinion, 80% of that budget is probably going to be stuff that makes sense, right? Maybe it's even less. I don't know. But it's definitely not going to be 100% because that last 10% is going to be just stuff just to fill it up, right? Because you know that if you don't spend it, you're going to lose it. So then you come up with all the stuff of, oh yeah, well, we need toilet paper and we need whatever. And we need, like, you're going to get all of the like kind of waste, fraud, and abuse in that last probably 10 or 15%. Just because, again, if you don't spend it, you're going to lose that. So like when you have an incentive to spend more money, you're going to get more money spent. I mean, like no brainer, right? So.
Well, are they intentionally making it low? Because Steve mentioned before that when he was on, they never even come close to their target number. Now they're going over by 70, 80, 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where is that money going? I think the last E-Splice, they had 400 million and they still had a year to go left before and where is that money going? And are they underdoing what they're supposed to do on purpose?
Well, I think this is the pivotal point for Hall County because it's not a crazy big government yet, but it's heading in that direction. And I think this is the point where people like Tyler, hopefully Corey, but that's kind of out of the way now. But later on too, if we fill the right people in there, you stop this nonsense of just wasteful spending and start looking at rainy day funds and like any kind of excess, just throw it in there instead of like, hey, you don't have to spend it. We'll put it in a savings account or something. And I don't know the legality behind that, but that's essentially what we should be doing.
Yeah, the irony there is like exactly what like Chris, what you were talking about, right? So like, there are two parts. One, both the schools and the county got about $100 million more out of the last SPLOST. So out of the last SPLOST 8, I guess, right? So SPLOST 8 and then the last E-SPLOST, both the schools and the county got almost double. Well, they got 50% more than what they had planned because their original budget was like $200 million. They got about $100 million more. So they had 50% more money to spend, both the schools and the county. I asked about it at the last E-SPLOST meeting. Of course, Will Schofield's like, oh, yeah, you did, because the county had the same thing, right? So, yeah, where did that money go? They just spent it. And then to Errol's point, the law says if you do not have to spend any overage, if you're going to spend an overage, it has to go to debt service. Right. You don't have any debt. Then what does it go to? It goes to property taxes. And so that's the crazy part about both of the schools and the county. They collected so much money over, they could have basically paid for all the property taxes collected in Hall County for a year. We could have had a zero property tax bill for this year specifically with how much overage they collected. And nobody talks about it. The schools don't want to talk about it because obviously where's the accountability going to come in? The county didn't want to talk about it because the same problem. People are going to be like, what the heck did you do with all the money? But they had all that money. That we collect $100 million of all the properties in the county. They collect $100 million, about $100 million a year in property taxes. The overage for both was $100 million. So both those budgets would have been sufficed with the overage from SPLOST. We would not have had No property in Hall County would have had property taxes this year if they had taken those overages and just said, hey, we're not going to spend it. We're going to give it back to you guys because we already had the budget and we already fulfilled the budget.
And then
Are we talking about just residential or commercial also?
No, that's all of it. So the homesteaded properties, this is another one. This is in the House Bill 581 and then the House Bill 33. So homesteaded properties, we collect about $62 million. I think it's somewhere there. Yeah, 61, 62. And then all the properties, it's about 105 or 108 million, somewhere in there.
Wow.
And then you got these, especially the school board, they're going out and taking bonds out when they've got the cash to pay for stuff. You know, he's taking a bond out to build $50 million addition at, I don't know, I can't remember what school would say, East Hall per se. Why don't you use the rainy day fund and then replenish it when SPLOST comes through instead of putting, because 1%, if they get 1% interest rates, that's a lot of money on $50 million.
You're on the problem with government spending in general, right? I mean, that's you're covering it. That's the problem when you have a board that rubber stamps kind of everything, when there's not really much accountability for what's being spent, where the money's going. When there's a person kind of directing where the money's going, and there's just little accountability for what's happening over there. Unfortunately, and this can kind of dovetail again to the conversation on the why, but when you go talk to people on the door knocking part of it, people are blown away to know that the school's budget is actually almost the same as the county's. Not very few people realize that they're basically spending somewhere around $300 million a year. And so that's a huge deal. And nobody runs for school board, right? I mean, Susan ran, Carla ran, Joe ran. So in the at-large seat, there were 3 candidates, but Brian Sloan, Deborah Smith, they didn't have a challenger. So, it flies under the radar, but ultimately government spending is government spending. All of it needs to be accountable to the people that they're taking the money from. And it's just not happening.
Yeah, no. And people don't understand how big the county budget is. And Steve mentioned it. I keep bringing Steve up because he's mainly the only one that's ever brought up the budget in the past. He said, we've only grown by 50,000 people in the last 15 years since he was on council, but our budget has doubled.
Mm-hmm.
He said, now make that make sense. Where is all that money and what's it going towards? And we've got to have the accountability, and we know you want it, and we knew Corey wanted it. And I think Corey did a great job getting 18% on a shoestring budget. That shows his potential and growth on down the road, because District 3 is hard to beat a 3-time incumbent. But, we got to get bean counters pretty much on the school board that's going to hold people accountable.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you just talked about, right? And I've thought that too. Man, I'm trying to think of where we started this first, but any competent and does a great job, I always get their card, because I'm like, I got to remember who you are, right? You need to be here. And it's the same thing with the candidates, right? So we've had some people run this past time that you're like, dude, we need, Hall County government is better if you're in it. So it's how can we figure out how to use people the most effectively? And that's why it becomes so frustrating at the voting meetings when commercial real estate agents that are friends with commissioners are appointed, because there's so many better people that are out there. I mean, we have 225,000 people. You're telling me that you can't come up with anything better than your 5 friends every time. So it's that idea of there's a couple people in my head that I'm thinking of right now that they are in their work capacity. They are in charge of a lot of things. And I guess a shout out to Gary Merrow right now. He's the one I can think of off the top of my head that he's run $300-400 million budgets before. And when you do it in the private sector, obviously you don't have those excuses, right? You can't just, okay, if we don't have enough money, we're going to do SPLOST. Or if we don't have enough money, we're just going to raise the millage rate, right? You don't have that capacity, when you're in the private sector. So you have to figure things out with what you've got. You got to play the hand you're dealt. And, there's so many great people around here that are so much, their capacity and their intelligence and their intentionality is so much better than some of the people that we have currently in these spaces, some of the appointments, some of the boards. It's we'd be stupid not to bring these people on board when they have that experience. I mean, it's I say this a lot too. There is not a monopoly on good ideas. You can find people that have great ideas because they've done it in the private sector, or maybe they did it some other government or whatever. But you have to find smart people and you have to bring them on board, and you have to do that, because otherwise you end up with what we got now, which is we just blow up balloon budgets and we don't have anything to show for it.
Well, and that's exactly case in point, these appointments. I mean, look at these rubber stamp appointments that we had the other day at the committee. And Billy Powell needs to be kicked off the commission for even bringing up Chris Braswell when he's still in a lawsuit against the county, already been fired. And then Billy Powell tables it for what, a month? Because he said, I need to think about what's better for the county. Hell no, you couldn't get them other 3 votes that you needed to put him on the board. I mean, don't piss on us and tell us it's raining.
Wait, so did he not get appointed yesterday?
No, he tabled it yesterday because I guess the other commissioners told him, look, we voted to fire him. We damn sure can't put him on another appointment.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that is the county attorney too. Maybe, hopefully there was a part of that where they go, hey, like you probably can't do this, right? So like if somebody has a lawsuit against you, maybe you can't.
Like, maybe it's not the best idea. Maybe it's not the best idea.
And then you look at the Ports Authority, I say Ports Authority, I was talking about the Ports Authority earlier with a guy, the Development Authority, they just recycle the same people.
Yep.
The county commission does not have to accept those nominees that they say, look, here's the 2 people you got to choose from. The commission can say, screw you, we're going to put who we want on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right? Like if you have 5 adults that have actually campaigned and won a seat, you would think that they would be competent enough to be able to find somebody for a development authority. But apparently we're not, right? So we have to have some other agency, the chamber. Apparently we have to have them appoint people, because otherwise we're just incapable of figuring out who should be on there, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, on the Development Authority, you got the Will Heights, you got the Big Jim Walters, his family, and then you got a couple of the Nortons and a couple others. They just keep rotating people. It's the same clowns all over. I mean, and that's how they keep control of everything. And I was hoping with some of these nominees, at least Kathy reached out to Corey to be on there. That's somebody new. And there's a couple other new names on there but the impact fee is not really I mean, it's an honor to be on there. I'm not saying that, but it's nothing that's impactful that much per se as some of these other appointments,
Yeah, and that's, oh man, okay, so yeah, so the appointment thing, a couple things there. I guess the first thing I would say from a platform standpoint is I would love to see this, and I plan on doing it. So if I'm in the seat, you will be seeing me do this, just because I think it's such a worthwhile thing. And I know Mark Redman, who's spoken the last couple of times at voting meetings, and I feel like he's been tied in with the Yellow Creek stuff, but he's talked considerably on, is there a vetting process by the people in some of this stuff? And so what I would love to see, and I would do this with any appointment that I would have, is whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever, come apply. Like, if you're just out there in the world and you have any kind of remote interest in this and you have a background in it, please apply. So I'm planning on, again, I don't want to put cart in front of the horse because we're 2 or 3 weeks out from that, and then potentially November. But, have a list of all the appointments and then put that out there and say, okay, apply to this. And then what I would love to do is have probably 2 or 3 people, if you have the most qualified people, and in that voting meeting or in the work session meeting, come pitch why we should select you. Like, come give me the 2-minute elevator pitch. I would know who that person is because obviously they would have reached out to me. But do that in the public context. Like, because we've talked about this several times, and anybody that's been at the voting meeting, I can't even honestly remember the name of the lady that Kathy's appointing to the planning commission, Sarah something. Yeah. And so, who the heck is Sarah King? I don't know who she is. So it would be nice to have Sarah King at a voting meeting before they vote on her. Tell me about you. Like, what's your work history? Like, what is why are you here? What is your context for being here? And have that capacity in the voting meeting, so that way everybody knows why they got selected, right? Like, if you have somebody in that meeting that's like, yeah, I did whatever, X, Y, and Z, and I rose to the top of my field, or I own my company or whatever, everybody in that room and everybody online and everybody that ever watched that, they would know exactly why that person got chosen, because we basically know their resume, right? So like, it seems silly to me that we don't have this, this current model for that, when it's easy things. You just have to be intentional about it. And to your guys' points, earlier on the appointment stuff, I even talked about this Wednesday, again, at the comprehensive plan review meeting. I was trying to look it up real briefly. Off the top of my head, it's OCGA 50-14. I don't know the last number. It might be 1. But there is a OCGA that says that any governing authority or county, whatever, but the verbiage says that they have to be the record and the record keeper of minutes and agendas. And so my comment to them was that development authority, it's basically a public-private thing, right? But it still has an ex officio seat. So Billy Powell's on there, right? He's in our ex officio role. So you have at least one person that's in county government. But that thing is a partnership with the city of Gainesville, Hall County. My argument is that by OCGA 50-14-1, if that's what it is, the county needs to be responsible for keeping those records. It does not need to fall to Tread Siphon, because Jody's brought this up before, and I brought this up because I emailed Tread Siphon as well. I said, hey man, I would love to see your guys' bylaws. I'd love to see your guys' minutes. I'd love to see your guys' upcoming agenda. And I never got a reply. The automatic reply was, I'm on vacation, and I'll be on vacation through whatever week that was. And that was like a month and a half ago. So I've never heard from Tread Siphon on any of that stuff for the Development Authority. And then Jody's comment was, Tread made her go down there, and he photocopied and made a book and charged her $270 or whatever on her stuff that she wanted. This is a joke. This is so sleazy. The whole thing just reeks of you guys are doing stuff that you don't want anybody to know about, clearly. And that's why you're hiding all this stuff behind there. And OCGA, in my opinion, says this stuff has to be held by the county. Jennifer Rivera should have the agendas and minutes and bylaws and all this stuff. I should not have to go to Tread Siphon to get this. Jennifer Rivera should have this.
Yeah, and Tread Siphon's as deep in it as it gets, because look at the tax abatements they were giving, Kubota and Kings Hawaiian. They done had that deal worked out before it ever brought in front of the commission. Not trying to dredge that up, but case in point, the older guy that talked at the end of the meeting the other day and said, who in the world is this lady? Why don't we know anything about her? He was going back to 2021, and Kathy Cooper goes, I can assure you she's qualified. I'll email you her resume. And that dude said he wasn't having none of it. He said, I want it out of the county records. I don't want her resume. I want it on the record why she was hired, why she was put in this position. And I should be able to get that information.
And I think that's part of doing the right thing, right? Because if you do the right thing, what was that? Character or integrity is doing the right thing when you know nobody's watching, right? And so that idea of why would you not want people to know who this person is? That's the problem that I have with a lot of those appointments. It's you should really want people to know who this is. I mean, they're going to represent a whole 50,000 people. The worst appointment here as of late, of course, is Bradley Dunkel to the Planning Commission. And Bradley Dunkel is going to represent 50,000 people at the Planning Commission. Anybody that's in District 2, that's your representative on the Planning Commission. And so the idea that you wouldn't want somebody to know or hide things or do whatever from somebody that's supposed to represent people in that capacity, it seems crazy to me. That the only reason you'd want that is because
Sunspots. Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, that was the end of the point, which is everything should be out in the open. You should want people to know who's representing them.
Well, and I get it. Then commissioners don't want to sit up there and having people come up there and introduce us. It slows things down, but they don't have an issue slowing things down when by God, they don't want to do something. You've got to be more transparent, and we need to know who's representing us in all aspects.
I mean, you can make an argument for that. I personally don't care if the meetings are 4 hours long. I mean, I'm going to order pizza at that point. So like, I'll be there however long it takes. I don't care. I mean, I feel like that's such an important part of the role. We only do it twice a month, right? So there's only 2 voting meetings a month. Sometimes there's only one, right? November and December, there's only one. So, I feel like if you're going to get paid $40,000 a year to be a commissioner, you can at least make the 8 hours, a month, right?
Exactly.
So like, I do feel like it's part of the job where however long it takes, that's how long it takes, right? So like, and again, there's some things maybe you can, and that's, of course, that's why you have a consent agenda, right? To try to make some of that stuff a little bit faster. But ultimately, if it's going to represent people and you're going to spend money on it, I do feel like you do need to at least explain what's going on there. But again, if it takes 4 minutes or takes 5 minutes, for 2 people or 3 people, whatever, I still feel like that would be 5 minutes that's worth spending on it, because that's going to be on the record.
Yeah, no doubt. And, enough's enough. And these people, and I'm a full believer that the reason we don't get more participation is everybody thinks why. They don't care. They don't talk about anything that we know about. We hear the results of what they talk about behind closed doors. We hear no explanations. We hear nothing. You'd think they were electing a new freaking pope or something, white smoke and black smoke, and it's not that secretive, man. You need to be more transparent with the public. And that's why Steve Gailey wanted to run again, because he's wanting to do what you're doing, is make everything out in the open. And Corey wanted to do the same thing. I mean, we're sick of this, and enough's enough. And if you get elected, is there a way for you to kind of maybe open the others' eyes up? Is one person enough? Say Kathy Cooper does get elected, we got more than 3 amigos. I mean, I know you're going to try, but is it feasible to think you and Gibbs can make a difference to be more transparent?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first part of that, of course, is, so if I win, I'm in the seat. I think the big thing there is I would love to go. The funny part about this is I do somewhat have a relationship with Jeff and Kathy, and it's not where it's like, we're friends and we hang out, and I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that I'm like, I'm on a whatever with them. But I have their cell phone numbers, and really, I haven't really talked to either of those people since my variance. So like when I was going through with my stuff, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever that was, when you're going through an application, you have to go talk to them. So that's the reason why I've talked to them before, is because I had my, I didn't talk to them during the rezoning request that failed, but I did talk to them during the variance. And so that's why I've talked to them before. But I would love to reach out to, the votes I see from Billy, man, you have to reach out to everybody. I think, I would still want to hear what his thoughts are on it, but I kind of feel like I already know. I do kind of feel like he's doing stuff for his own benefit and not for District 2. But from Jeff and Kathy, like, I would love to sit down with both of those people and be like, just tell me your reasoning for why you voted certain ways. Like, maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't think I am, because I see what the results are of the voting, but maybe there's something that I'm missing. Maybe there's something there, but I think part of that too, it's the communication part of it. Right. So like I'll tell anybody this all day. Both of those people, Jeff and Kathy, they have a lot of votes that I would never have voted for. I don't agree with them at all. I mean, pretty much all the stuff that you see that's got a lot of notoriety, I don't agree with them at all. 5079 Old Liner Highway, 5111, 4616, 4745 Cable Mill Road, like all that stuff. Yellow Creek, like all of those, I don't agree with them at all on. So like, it's not to like figure that part out, but it's to figure out, like, is there something that either, like I said, I'm missing, or is there a way that I can bring you to see this part of it? Like, let's go talk to the people that are next door to the rezoning that you had and go see if they have the same opinion that they did when they opposed it. All right. So if it's just as bad as it was, or everybody hates it still, then this is the direct result of what you were passing. Like, this is the problem with doing this stuff, is that, we can go to Highland Gate right now, went through that subdivision. That subdivision was, it was built by Cook Communities, and the sewer, is a community sewer, and it's run by Holsey Environmental. That neighborhood is a huge problem. We have a problem with the houses. Some of the houses that are a couple of years old, the trim's coming off, the paint's peeling, all this kind of stuff. They're like cheap houses, even though it's a nice neighborhood. And then the sewer is a huge problem. You cannot have like the lowest bidder do a community septic deal and have this thing work at all. He's basically overcharging these people. You know, he's charging them like $75 a month, and it's like a monopoly on who can do it. So you use that kind of like, we go talk to these people. So that way in the future, we know that if an application comes up with, you know, if we got a problem with Cook, we got a problem with Hulsey, or if we have kind of the same application where they're wanting to do a density that requires a community septic, we know because we have the feedback from the people that have lived in that, right?
Right.
When you have something that passes, you just see it on the computer screen. You don't know what happened 2 years down the road. You don't know what happened 5 years down the road. So like, go talk to those people. Again, this comes back to like, right, being engaging with the people, right? Amazing that you would go engage with the people as a commissioner, but you need to go talk to the people that are around or in your rezonings that you passed to see if it even worked out like how you thought it was going to work out.
Well, and if you do your homework, like especially on Hulsey, they've got a history of doing shady bit practices. I mean, you know, and it's the same way with a lot of vendors that the county uses. You know, when I was in the commercial construction industry, we knew that certain companies that bid commercial roofing were going to way underbid and then back charge the county with change orders. You know, it slows everything down. It costs twice as much instead of putting in one bid. And you can understand it maybe the first time you do it, but when you're redoing the same schools over and over, it shouldn't ever happen again. And
that goes back to the conversation we had before with being accountable for the money, right? Like the change order stuff is such a problem, and there's never any accountability of it because it happens in the works.
All right, we're back.
There he is.
Where we left off. So the work session meeting, you know, that, like I always say, the way. Dang.
All right, you're back.
So the waste, fraud, and abuse happens at the work session meetings because it's on 3 p.m. on a Monday. Nobody's there, right? So
Right.
That's why we get the change orders in there. And where's the accountability for the change orders, right? And so you have this part of it where why are the commissioners not holding these people accountable? And the second part of it is exactly what you just said is if we have problem contractors, why are we using them again? And then the other part of that too, you know, it kind of goes in with the back stuff is the bond side of it, right? So if you have a bond for this stuff, you know, where's the enforcement for that? Where were the conditions for that? So it's holding people accountable where what we've been doing so far up until this point is just kind of ignoring it, right? They're our friends, so we're going to let it pass, or, you know, whatever, it'll work itself out, or they can fend for themselves, whatever. So, you know, again, it's the lack of being intentional about what you pass up front and then what it looks like on the back side of it. So,
Well,
you know, it's all connected.
Yeah, naturally, nobody wants to get into the bonding company, but eventually you got to stand up and say, look, you underbid this crap. You're just going to have to eat the cost, or we're going to have to turn it over to the bonding company and get somebody else in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we're seeing right now with Highland Gate subdivision. There was a problem with that. They got the EPD involved in there now, so hopefully there'll be some solution to that problem. But
is Highland Gates a Cook's community?
So Cook is who was building the houses. Hulsey Environmental is who did the sewer.
And
How old is the subdivision?
It's not very old. I mean, some of the houses in there are brand new. It was one of those where it was built in stages. So I think the oldest houses, because some of it was from COVID, right? So like I think they started building some of the houses right before COVID, and then COVID hit. They didn't build anything for a while, and then stuff finally, like there's only 2 or 3 lots left in that subdivision. So some of the houses in the back are almost brand new, but some of the houses up front are 7 years old, 8 years old, something like that.
I gotcha.
Well,
I usually compare Cook communities to DR Horton, which is notorious for building shoddy houses all around the country. So this is our local level DR Horton, if you will.
right. Well, they're not really local anymore. Cook's expanded out to Alabama and a couple other places now.
Hey, I mean, that money's great. Why not expand? It's all over Southeast.
Well, and you look at Cook, when you start looking through all the campaign contributions, they have people all over donating as individuals. You start searching who these people are and look at their LinkedIn pages and where they come up, and they're greasing some palms around here.
There's nobody in our race that's taking money from Cook Communities. Surely there's not anybody.
But but that stuff's got to stop, and I think you're going to do a good job trying to battle that. And one way I think you can get more transparency is, like say with Greg Poole, and I'm not picking on him, but he's the only one that the Three Amigos team up on.
Mm-hmm.
If they promise him in private that they're going to vote a certain way and then backstab him at the meetings, you're going to have to call them out in front of everybody. Hey, why did you lie to me? Greg said, you lied to me, but we don't know what the hell they lied to him about. When it's commission time at the end, you call them to the carpet and say, look, we've got to be transparent to these people. This is my district. I want to know why in the world you would vote against me when I don't want this.
Yeah, and I think that's like specifically on the Greg part, I think obviously his heart's in the right place, but we don't always get the follow through sometimes, right? So like it would be nice, I think of that one, it was during the Ben Parks application, and then the that kind of free chapel related community home that was after it, where Greg and Billy were vocally going at it, like right behind David's back. They were like going at it, right? And Billy made some comment, why don't you say it into the microphone? And it's like, it would be nice to have that in the commission time of like, bring the receipts, right? Like you said this on this date, you said this, I have an email right here that says this, or I have a phone conversation right here. So like bring that. That's the point of the commission time, in my opinion. And I agree wholeheartedly with Steve, because he's been saying that ever since I've been talking to him. He's like, if you're in there and you're screaming into the wind, he's like, the commission time is when you put them on blast. Yeah. And it's like, there's a tact to it. You can't right off the bat do that. I mean, you do have to handle it a certain way, but that's the entirely appropriate time to lay everything out for the record on what happened in the background. And like I said, I mean, we don't get that right now. We haven't seen any of that in the commission time. We do get general complaints sometimes, but we don't get the record of like, you told me this and you didn't do it, and this is what just happened in this meeting, right? So yeah, that becomes the nuclear option. If I'm sitting in there and we get votings that happen like that, but I do think some of it can be staved off by, like I said, trying to communicate with these people. I always say that if you agree with somebody, even 10% of the time or 5% of the time, it's worth agreeing with them 5% of the time, 10% of the time. So like you have to take wherever agreements that you have, and you have to kind of make it work and work together that way. But yeah, ultimately there is that possibility, but I would hope that some of that, it may not be. Maybe we're sitting here in a year and I'm back with you guys and I go, this sucks. Like, we're not getting anywhere. This is the same as it was.
That's one thing is you keep notes, and I'm not saying you keep tabs on everybody, but you got to, with some of this stuff, you've got to do your homework and say, look, you've got a history of this. And I think that if you call people out, they're going to start being more transparent because they don't want to piss their constituents off and not get reelected if they choose.
Well, I mean, I think you just got to remind them they work for you. Like that's what kind of gets lost in all of this, is like people get scared that they're in a higher position or something like that. No, these people are literally your employees. You pay their salaries. You pay for the lights.
And part of it too, I think when you converse with the other commissioners, and this is easier said than done for sure. Like, I'm not going to go out there and be like, I'm not going to tell you guys, oh yeah, I'm 100% awesome on this and I can do this, whatever. There is part of it where you have to disassociate the voting with the person. Like you can't hate somebody. You're not going to usually get anywhere if you hate somebody and there's no communication and all that stuff. It's going to be very hard to work with somebody where you hate them. And I've said this a million times. And, if I get flack for this, whatever, I don't hate Kathy. I don't hate Jeff. I don't hate Billy. I disagree with their votes a lot. I do. But I don't hate them as people. In fact, I would even say this, and this is not to get in the context of the District 1 race, because I have no I have no reason at all to comment at all on the District 1 race. However that turns out is how it turns out. I have to work with that person. If I win, I'm going to have to work out with whoever wins. But what I would say is that, Kathy and Jeff, again, in my variance, because I have their number and I talk to them, both of those people helped me. I can't escape that. There's no way to rationalize that they're terrible people there, because both of those people had nothing to gain from helping me at all. And both of those people helped me. So like Kathy, she did a little bit of the legwork from the planning side and from inspections. Jeff, I met in his office, believe it or not. Granted, the commissioners don't really have offices, so it's just kind of a room. It's like a barren room. But Jeff gave me the time. I was over there. I bet I met him for probably 10, 15 minutes. So, they're not like the worst people on the planet. They're people that we either don't know why they're voting for it, or unfortunately they're doing things for a personal gain. But ultimately, you have to work with them, right? So like you can't just call them out and be like, Jeff's the worst person on the planet and he lies all the time. He does all this stuff. It's like you have to do it from the context of these are what the facts are. And I guess it's like anything, right? If you're going to argue with anything, you have to try to keep your emotions out of it as much as possible. But you just have to lay out what happened, right? This is the email. This is what you said you were going to do. You didn't do it. So,
well, and I think that's what gets lost. Is I've got a lot of friends that I love to death. I hang out with, but would I put them on a planning commission or something like that? No. I mean, it takes a certain type of person, and what people don't understand is we're not dogging these people out personally. I mean, when we get them on here, we talk about we're talking about their votes and how they go about things.
It comes with the territory, though.
Huh?
I said it comes with the territory. We're not talking about the person as an individual or anything like that, but as a professional in a board of commissioner seat, the way you're voting, your attitude towards some of the people, so like particularly Jeff, I think, I called him for about a data center application that I had in Gainesville. Great. Like, called me back within 30 minutes, explained to me, hey, I don't have too much to do with this since it's in the city. Cool. All right. I appreciate it. Didn't get any bad advice from him, but then I see him, the way he yells at people, trying to get out of the conference room. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, this is terrible optics. You know what I mean? So like, great guy, sure, all the things, but then like, yes, we're questioning what you're doing on taxpayer time.
Yeah, and I would say there's probably a point, and this is an argument. I think we made this last time. This could be an argument for term limits. I do think there's a point at which somebody reaches an expiration date in their office where they're no longer that concerned with like reaching people and being that representative, being that conduit, right? So like. And I'm not going to say this is Jeff and Billy, or Kathy or whatever. I'm not going to say that about anybody, but there is that possibility where they become desensitized, right? So like, and sometimes that's they need to kind of re-charter their direction and their attitude, and maybe that's where the talking comes in. And then sometimes they've sold out and they don't want to do anything, and they're just they're collecting a check or whatever. So there's that possibility. But yeah, I think exactly what you said, Daryl, which is like, that would be something where I feel like I would talk to Jeff like after the meeting, be like, hey man, like I personally think that you are wrong in this situation, and this is why. Again, it's not because you're the worst person ever, but I think that your focus is maybe a little bit off. And so again, it's how you handle it, I think, hopefully. Again, It's easier said than done, and I'm not in there right now, so I don't know. But it does feel like there's an opportunity to be like, hey man, like I'm telling you this because I want to see you do well. Like I want to see District 4 be represented, right? So even though, as far as I know, I don't think either of those guys are going to run unopposed again. Obviously District 2's not. But even in the District 4 seat, I've heard people that are interested in running. So, maybe some of that's a wake-up call to those people too. Like, hey man, like people aren't liking this. You can't keep doing this to people and expect to just be here forever as long as you want to be. Like you're going to have to really engage people. You're going to have to be a representative of the people, because you're just going to get a lot of pushback now. You're going to get people that are going to run against you. You're going to actually have to run. So.
Well, and that's why the Nortons and everybody's dogging social media. They don't like the gains that it's making and waking people up.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to understand this is part of it, and it's not going to go away. Even if we shut up, it's still not going away.
This man, I was thought about this point, and then we went out because my connection's awful. This is exactly what I was thinking about with the comprehensive plan. This is why nobody in the upper levels. This is why commissioners, county government, the development authority. This is why nobody wants people to know what's going on. Because let's say, for the sake of the argument here, that you get 50% of the people to fill out the comprehensive plan, right? So now the comprehensive plan is aware, and people have had their feedback. So 110,000 people. What do you think those 110,000 people are going to do? Are they just going to be like, oh yeah, hey, don't worry about it? Those people are not going to be engaged, right? So if you take the time to fill out the stuff for the comprehensive plan, you're going to be like, okay, well, then what did it do, right? So now you're going to follow along to the voting meetings. Now you're going to see, like, if you know about crap. All right, yeah, we're coming back. All right, so if
I think Tyler's going to have to hold T-Mobile accountable for his internet service.
Make him pay for a Starlink.
Yeah. Shoot, I would just get my money back for this month.
Okay, we're back.
There we go.
If we're aware of what's happening in the comprehensive plan, 100,000 people are following along, then when you see a rezoning application, the first thing you see is planning staff recommends approval or denial based on the comprehensive plan. That's the thing I filled out, right? Like, that's the thing that I just did. So now you know how planning staff works, because they're going to take the information that you gave them. They're going to make recommendations for approval or denial. And then you know what the commissioners are doing, because if they go against basically what planning staff says, then you know that they didn't meet the comprehensive plan. So like, there's an awareness now, right? So you got to get people plugged in first. You got to explain the why. You got to get people invested. Then we got to know what the comprehensive plan is, and we got to set the path for the next 20 years. Then we got to get planning staff to make great assessments based on the comprehensive plan. Then we have to keep commissioners accountable to what the comprehensive plan is. So of course the whole thing is broken down, because if you just get involved and invested at the very beginning, you're going to want to see where your investment went. You're going to want to follow that through. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think the least amount of people they get for feedback is what they want, because they don't want anybody to know what they're doing. So,
well, and one thing that I think a lot of people lose is you can make changes to the comprehensive plan and the UDC, or actually the UDC, without redoing the whole thing. All you got to do is give 3 meetings. If you see something's not working, you can change on the fly. You're not stuck to that for the next 3 years, 7 years, or whatever.
Yeah, and
Thank you, Steve Gailey.
Yeah, and John Gentry talked about this at the first, I think it's quarterly exercise review, I think. So, and that's what we had Wednesday, right? So the county government, the administration and the staff is going to meet once a quarter, and what they do.
Sunspots.
Solar flares. Is that what's causing his outage? Tyler, you cut out right at John Gentry and them have quarterly meetings where they.
Yep. So they have quarterly review meetings, and they review if they're on target for the goals that are in the comprehensive plan. And again, that's the same thing that you guys were talking about earlier, right? So you have this idea from administration now where we are going to basically stay on top of all the stuff that we've talked about, right? So are we taking the feedback that we got? And this is going to get into another problem. Steering committee, we don't spend time on it if you don't want. But, we're going to have another steering committee, right? And so, this idea of, as long as we have accountability and as long as we know like who's going on to what and where and for what reason, at least then we can somewhat safely assume that the comprehensive plan is somewhat safe. But until that happens, I don't. That's why I don't trust the last one. And that's the actual good part about it is just what you talked about, Chris, which is you don't have to throw the whole thing out. You can actually every 3 years, and like you said, actually, if you wanted to do sooner than that, you can call for meetings. But you can actually modify the thing on the fly as long as you kind of have that control back. Obviously, you got to have 3 commissioners on board with that. But you can actually modify the thing if you know that it's not working, or at least what you just passed is not working.
Right. I think Steve said you just got to have 3 meetings to where people can speak about it, and then you can, you can get changes done pretty quickly if you have to.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So John Gentry's his view on it wasn't that the character areas and the descriptions were bad. It was what zoning classifications that we were allowing in certain character areas, which is pretty much identical to what my assessment was. It wasn't that it wasn't like North Hall character area was a problem, like where the boundaries were. And really, it wasn't North Hall, it was really more East Hall. So it wasn't really that East Hall boundaries were a problem. It's what the zoning classifications that we were allowing in the East Hall character area.
Right. Now, and one thing I want to hit on just before we get into some other stuff is, what with the comprehensive plan, I think the main thing we've got to do is simplify it. It's you shouldn't have a comprehensive plan that's 2 inches thick. I mean, I was looking at it the other day at the debate about a month ago now, and that's just too complicated. You just got to have it simple, and you got to let it be known also that as a commissioner, sometimes you got to vote a certain way because it's in the, you can't, just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean you can't. You got to vote for it to keep, lawsuits from happening. And because if you go against, you can't tell somebody that they can't build if they if they check all the boxes. Frozen in time. You get that? I mean,
pick up, and I don't know if you had anything after that, but the complexity of the comprehensive plan essentially. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking of I don't remember what the original bill was or what year it was, but the 40 acres in a bill from 150 years ago when they were going to settle the West, that bill was like 2 pages long, right? So you had a bill through the government that was it covered thousands of square acres, right? And it was 1.5 pages long or whatever it was. And of course, as we've gone along, lawyers get involved, of course. But the comprehensive plan is so much more complicated. If you go back and read the 2005 one, it has half the pages in it. This one that we have now is the largest comprehensive plan that we've ever had. And part of that, to me, in my opinion, too, is it's what happens when you outsource everything, right? So if you spend $300,000 with TSW, I think is who we had do it. I'm pretty sure it's TSW. But if you spend $300,000 with a planning firm, then they're going to want to show you 300 pages, right? They need somewhat of a justification for that money that you spent. So you're going to get something that probably is way more complicated than it needs to be, just because potentially they're going to be like, well, here's, you spent $300,000. Well, here's the, this fancy comprehensive plan. And it's exactly what you said, which is we've gotten to the point where it's hard. And that's the hardest part of making videos that I do when I was trying to do the Friday stuff pretty regularly, is distilling down complicated things into 3 minutes or 4 minutes. That is so hard to do. It takes so long to kind of create the narrative, chop splice, create the narrative that people have the attention span for. And that's the problem with the comprehensive plan that we have right now, which is that it's so long, it's so complicated. Yeah, if you're nerdy and you like it, I like it, it's cool. I've read the whole thing probably 2 or 3 times. They did a great job with it. But it is too complicated for just the person off the street that isn't into that. If you're not a planner, if you're not really into that, it is way too complicated. There's too much stuff there to discern what's supposed to go where, all the setback stuff, the development code. What's the difference between the Unified Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan? Why are there 2 different things? You get that a lot too. So yeah, I mean, the stuff really is at a level that we've created our own problem because we had to spend money on it. That's my personal opinion.
Pretty much. And then why you got stuff in there like Stan Hunt and them trying to use the comprehensive plan as their defense? Said, it was in the comprehensive plan. That's what we went by. When state law tells you about the sunshine laws, you can't have these meetings. That should be, none of that should be in there. It should all just be about, zoning and how you do all that stuff. I mean, about what your plans are, not.
Wait, so are you saying our old zoning codes were better than our UDC at this point? because our old zoning codes and whatnot were much more simplified, and
Well,
they were
this
only like
is
3-4 pages long from what I remember.
so this is the part where I have this slide in my head, and this is the one from the presentation. There, when you look at the current comprehensive plan, there's a page in there, and it says that they did evaluation of the previous plan, so 2017 to 2024, and they found that like 33% of the time, the decisions from the Board of Commissioners did not meet the comprehensive plan. And that was part of their justification for increasing the complexity of the comprehensive plan, because what they said was that the vast majority of those 33%, which is like 90 applications, I think, almost all of those applications were planned developments. So they were either planned residential, planned commercial, or planned industrial. And so what they did is they created more character areas. And so they created more character areas where things could potentially go in, because they were trying to break up the map, because it used to be that all of East Hall and North Hall was under a rural designation. And so what they did is they created about 3 character areas just for that area that only had 1 last time. So then they were going to say, well, this is inland port, so now you can have this. The other real giant abuse, and I know I sound like a broken record on this, was the employment and business nodes corridors. The employment and business nodes corridors is the Wild West of our zoning. It allows almost everything. And that single corridor, what they classify as that corridor, it like tripled in size. Like almost everything in the county that is a major state route is that now. So that's really where the stuff came from, is they created this corridor, and now we're going to allow anything in it.
Well, you see everybody that was on the planning steering meeting and whatnot, it makes complete sense as to let it be the Wild West, so we can put whatever we want when we want it.
Yeah, and that's kind of an incrementalism, right? So what we were going to do, what it feels like was what we're going to do, and I know we talked about this last time, so we don't spend a ton of time on it. Incrementalism. So we're going to pass something here, and then we're going to let it spread, right? It's the cancer. It's going to spread out. So now we're going to take over White Sulphur. Now we're going to take over Keiko Mill Road. Right, so we created this way that we can just put stuff here. It's going to piss everybody off around it. We're going to grow it out, and then we're going to slowly we're going to expand the corridors. We're going to create more character areas. So now we're going to have a character area that's immediately around the corridor, right? So even though we were in a rural designation, now what we have is suburban neighborhood low density or suburban neighborhood medium density, and it surrounds the corridor. So we allow everything in the corridor that we want in there. Then we change the rural designation to suburban neighborhood, that's just immediately around the corridor. Now we allow the high density there, and then we're gonna slowly start creeping away from 365, from 129. So we're gonna take everything that has frontage, and then we're gonna move to the next road, and then we're gonna move to the next road. So when I look at it, incrementalism, and that was what my comment was at every meeting, was we need clearly defined boundaries. We have to know where this development is going to stop. Right. So like if it's just an open door and we just say, hey, we're going to allow this in the future here, nobody knows if they're going to have a warehouse or whatever next door to them. So if I live off Bob Bryant Road, or I live off A.L. Mangum Road, or I live off of Roy Parks Road, I don't know if I'm going to have a warehouse next door to me, because every time that we have a renewal for this thing, the corridor gets larger, my character area changes. So like that's really what is driving this stuff is, and this is why the comprehensive plan is so important. They have to do this by the comprehensive plan. They have to change the comprehensive plan, because again, if it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, then the commissioners are free to deny them, and they have no standing in court. So that's why they have to do it through the comprehensive plan.
See, and I just had a buddy, he sold his house up in Maryville and moved to Florida, because when they passed that big warehouse for that roofing company and HVAC company next to those neighborhoods about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, he said, enough's enough. He said, that's on my back doorstep. He said, I've got to sell. He said, my wife's been wanting to move to Florida anyway. He had enough in to retire at Fielddale, and he said, we're gone. He said, I got to sell it now when I can get what it's worth out of it.
Tyler, the amount of people that you've met door knocking in your district, and I would say specifically White Sulphur, if you've door knocked out there, or Bob Bryant, like the ones that you were just mentioning. How many of those people actually knew about, or and then if they knew about it, understood what they're trying to do with this, with these corridors and comprehensive plan and whatnot? I'm going to assume, just by your expression right now, I would say very little.
Yep. So that's something I always say too, right? Which is, when the yellow rezoning sign comes out, it's too late, right? Like when you get to that point, you almost don't have any choice at that point, right? Like the work, it's the old cliche of a pound or an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And so, you know, when one of the things I always ask is, have you heard of the comprehensive plan, like ever? And I try to put the clarifier on there, like, you haven't heard me, like, don't count me if I've talked about it and you've heard my stuff. Like, a year ago, had you ever heard about it a year ago? Have you ever heard about it when you moved here? Any of that stuff? And of course, the answer is always no. I think right now I'm about, 5 or 7% of the time I get people that have heard of the comprehensive plan before. And I had 7 or 8 people that have actually filled out anything for the comprehensive plan from the county side of it. So, that's a perfect point there, which is that almost nobody knows where the development is going to go because it's in a 300-page. Dang it. Okay, good. I thought I'd froze out on you. Nobody knows where the development's going to go because it's hidden in a 300-page comprehensive plan, right? So nobody reads the comprehensive plan because it's way more complicated than it needs to be. So nobody knows where it's going to go. The county doesn't put this stuff out there. In fact, we've had this several times. Mike Lewis is one off of Cagle Road. And he's like, if I knew what the comprehensive plan was before I bought my house, I would not have bought this house. And it's maybe, and I'm sure real estate agents maybe don't want you to know that because they're not going to sell the house. But maybe that should come with, if you're going to buy anything in Hall County, here's a copy of our comprehensive plan map. If you don't want a warehouse next door to you, don't buy a house on White Sulphur Road. Don't buy a house on Cagle Mill Road. Don't buy a house on Cagle Road. Don't buy a house off 129. Don't buy a house in these places because the comprehensive plan right now says they don't even want you to live there. They say at some point it needs to be a commercial warehouse, or it needs to be a cold storage place, or it needs to be a Cargill or whatever.
Well, and that's the issue is when they updated the new plan, even though the intention was for the sewer and the corridor up 365 to be residential on the other side of the tracks, commercial on the interstate side of the tracks, that was never put in writing anywhere. The commission just said, well, they'll abide by it. Well, it's obvious they're not. And that's where we run into this mess out through there. Yeah,
and that's unfortunately another point of that too, right? So even the best laid plans are subject to change. And so if you have a great commission and they lay out a great plan, if all of those people are gone, there's no guarantee that the commissioners in the future are going to hold to that. So yeah, that's another problem of the process, right? It's not a flaw, it's a feature.
Yeah, no, so you got 1,200 homes going in up at Lula now, and that's not what it was made for. And eventually, and that's why Lula, and I've heard a lot of people mention, I sent you up there to see my buddy Dave up there in Lula at his store. And he was telling me a few months ago that, if they don't get spliced, which I don't see it ever running out, they're going to end up having to probably implement property taxes in the town of Lula to keep up because of all the growth and all the homes and stuff, because their city infrastructure can't handle it. And that's the last thing they want. But that's what the county wants, because that's more reason for them to pass SPLOST.
Yeah, and the city model falls apart if you don't have SPLOST, right? So if you don't have SPLOST, essentially the cities don't really have any money. So then they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do if that's, like you said, creating a property tax, having that kind of thing. So the cities are entirely dependent on SPLOST. So yeah, you're going to have serious problems if you don't have that, if you don't renew it. And I would really like to see, this is just wishful thinking. I would love to see the cities separated from SPLOST, have their own kind of thing. We could spend an hour on SPLOST, the problem with it, but it would be nice to disassociate that, because I don't think anybody really has a problem with cities. I think the problem that I have with it is the accountability for the money being spent. And it goes back to what I said before. If you have a dollar amount that at the end of the thing, you're gonna get waste, because you're just gonna get at the end of it. The last 10 or 15% or 20% is gonna be stuff that you're just making up because you need to spend it. But yeah, Lula's got its own problems. They're going to double their city size just about from just the developments they passed. If you look at 52, 2 miles north or south of 52, they're almost doubling the town just right in those 4 miles. It's like you have so many units that have passed right in there. And that's kind of the scary thing. If you're sitting on the city council in Lula, You better get into some neighborhoods and start door knocking, because it's going to turn into like Flowery Branch with a reunion, right? Like all of a sudden, all of your city councils out of one neighborhood, and they're going to control everything because that's where all the votes are. So it's like, if you pass that kind of stuff, you better be very careful about what you're doing there, because you can end up in a situation where all of a sudden you're going to have wrested control away from, and they have districts or whatever, so they're going to try to clamp down on some of that. But they're going to have so many people in there, they're going to have to create districts just for those neighborhoods. So.
Right.
Has the city of Lula ever thought about just not existing as far as like the government goes? Like, hey, we don't need a government. Let's.
You ever talk to the people in Lula? That ain't happening.
Okay.
No, it's nothing against them. They're very proud of their heritage and what they have up there. And
yeah, well, I mean that's totally fine. I'm just saying, as true Republicans, if you are one, a government shouldn't exist. The government doesn't have a right to exist. So therefore, I would always almost think like, hey, let's just dissolve our government at this point if we can't afford it. Yeah,
that would be, as Chris mentioned, I think you would be running, paddling upstream, running uphill. There's definitely some ingrained parts of that, and the downside, of course, is you lose kind of that sense of community. But then, of course, the caveat to that is it worth the money that you're taking for the sense of community? You could potentially still have that. Do you need to take?
But I don't think a city government defines your community, though. You know what I mean? So like if your community's identity is tied to your government, then you don't necessarily have a community. You have a government. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Right.
Yeah. Hey. So yeah. I missed the last part of it, but yeah. The easier version of what we're talking about here, at least in what we can do, of course, is getting rid of Rest Haven. So at least, Lula's, there's a lot of infrastructure. Well, for a city, it's got a decent amount of infrastructure. You'd have a lot of problems and concerns with trying to do that. But, we do have an option right now to get rid of a town, right? We can get rid of Rest Haven. We need to get rid of Rest Haven.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the problem, of course, there is, and we've had several applications recently here. Everything that you've seen at a voting meeting that's off of Gainesville Highway, they had a problem where the city of Rest Haven was no longer issuing permits for them. And they've realized now that they're going to be in unincorporated Hall County. And so when you have basically a trailer park in one neighborhood left in a city like that, why do you exist? Because you're getting $28,000 from Hall County SPLOST. You're getting about $30,000 from Gwinnett County SPLOST. So why do you exist? So
does the city of Rest Haven have one city councilman woman?
Dude, it's so sketchy. I mean, so they have 5 council members, I guess. They have a mayor, and then
5.
And the crazy part, you're gonna love this. Of the 4 council members that are not the mayor, there's a man and wife, there's 2 guys and 2 women on there, and then they're married. So one of the guys is married to one of the women, and one of the other guys is married to the other woman. So it's basically 2 husband and wives and a mayor. And that's whose Rest Haven's city government is. And like I said, there's 40 people in this town. It's what in the world? It was just a giant waste of anything at all. Right. And then you go look at their SPLOST, and they have a city attorney, right? They have who's paying
that's
the city?
That's be the most kosher job, because you have nothing to deal with ever. It's got to be.
It's a complete waste. They outsource most of their stuff to the city of Buford. So their planning and zoning and their build stuff is technically run by the city of Buford.
Right.
Amazing.
Now, let's change the gears right here before we end up. The past couple of days, we've had some mudslinging from one of the candidates, and that was kind of a shock to me, because up until 3 days ago, District 3 has been a pretty calm race. I mean, it's been cordial. There's been no bad words said between anybody, none of the candidates. You all seem to be working together, and then just out of nowhere, they're knocking on you for the SuperPAC, which you've got no control of. They're knocking on you being born in California. I mean, there's 3 things that you can pretty much count on. You can't help who your parents are. You can't help where you were born. You can't help where you live until you're 18. I mean, you have no control over that stuff. And then they claim you tried to change all of North Hall by building your barn, wanting to make it all industrial.
Yeah, the frustrating part about that kind of the accusation on because I've seen that a couple times where it's like, didn't you know he tried to rezone to industrial or whatever? And the frustrating part about that is like, if you had ever heard my story, and we did 2.5 hours at one time, right? So I mean, like, you guys know my story. I've talked about it every single time. If you knew that I had a rezoning, you would also have known that it failed, and I came back later when I read the code and got a variance. So it's like, how do you get half the story, right? So the only way that I feel like you can get half the story is somebody's only telling you half the story, right? So, and that's why I'm not surprised to see them.
Yeah, that's the dirty politics that I had to call them out on yesterday. It's because they're completely leaving context out of it. But that's politics in general at this point in this entire country. I think me and Chris both were kind of shocked that it came down to a local level like this, where it's just like everything's just being thrown out there out of context. They're trying to catering to that Trump MAGA base. Like, do you know he's from California? He's an undercover Democrat.
Like you're trying to make it sound like you're Gavin Newsom's nephew or something.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said there, which is, the implication, of course, right? We're going to only tell you half the story because we want to do your thinking for you, right? And that's why I like talking to you guys so much. I think that's why we've been, friends for a while now here. It's like, I was talking about this with my wife last night. It's like, there's people out there. You guys are that way. Steve's that way, where you don't buy things at face value. You want to do your own homework, right? So you'll take whatever somebody tells you, right? But I'm not going to just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. I'm going to do my own homework, and I'm going to look into it. I'm going to see if it makes sense. And that's, I think, those of us that are at least interested in searching for the truth, that's why it's kind of easy to poke holes in it, because it's like, this just doesn't sound right. Like, there's just not like there's pieces missing. Like, when you hear that, you're like, okay, so like if I was a secret Californian and I was going to turn it into like, whatever, like,
Row.
Nothing lines up. So like, I wouldn't need to care about any other stuff. Like, I wouldn't care about the comprehensive plan. I wouldn't care about the development code. I wouldn't care about any of this stuff. In fact, if I was the secret, if I'm the Manchurian candidate, then I don't want you to know what's going on. Like, I wouldn't tell you any of this stuff, like, so like that part doesn't make sense if you're going to view it as I'm going to destroy North Hall into California. I wouldn't be telling you how we're manipulating the comprehensive plan. I wouldn't be telling you all this other stuff. Like, I don't think that at all. That's why I even got into this position where I'm at now. That's why I'm even running.
Exactly. Well, it's only that the more you look into it, Shannon's the one that's doing what he's accusing you of. He's trying to flip the script here. And then on top of that, he's got his buddy, our city county commissioner, Greg Poole, doing his bidding up on the county commission stand. I mean, he dogged you one time, called you a freaking moron or whatever because of the culvert we brought up the last time. Then
do we have any more culvert news?
On the culvert again the other night. Yeah, the other night he brings the culvert up again after everybody's already forgotten about it.
Yeah, I guess we can clear the air on the culvert, right? Because
he was dead right in the middle of that crap,
And so I'll give him, and again, I'm not above extending grace to people if they deserve it. So maybe there is a situation where, we weren't clear enough when it got brought up, and for whatever reason he thinks that we don't know what we're talking about or whatever. And it's kind of a weird story, and I've told this to several people online. And the whole thing comes back. Well, actually, there's 3 parts of it, right? So the first part of it is, how did a private road, in my opinion, it's private, how did Harrington Road get on the radar for basically over $400,000 worth of culvert and repaving? That road is a private driveway for 2 people. It's a private driveway for the Mansfield mansion. It's a private driveway for the Benz family. Beautiful houses, gorgeous houses. I mean, just beautiful houses. So, but how did they get the money approved for this thing? And then, Greg owns 100 acres that's right there, and he has an easement on Harrington Road. And so, even if it was a above the board, he didn't, and this is what he's been saying, is that he didn't request it, and that's fine. Okay, I get it. The problem is, and it comes back to, that's why I pulled it up here, and I've got it pulled up. So hopefully I don't lose you guys on it.
You were ready for it.
I know, because I was like, I knew it was going to come up. The problem is that because he owns 100 acres right there, there is a section in the code that says if, and it's, I'll even have it right here. If you guys want to nerd out, because I know people are like, oh, where's the code on it? So in the International Fire Code, it's section 503.1.1. It talks about approved fire apparatus access roads. Sorry if this is too nerdy. And it says Appendix D 107.1, and it says developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of dwelling units exceeds 120 shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. And so the problem is that his neighborhood, if he does a neighborhood right there, which he can, and this is a problem with the comprehensive plan, right? He owned 100 acres. I think he bought it in 2016. It got moved into the employment and business nodes corridors, right? It's right there off of 365, right there at White Sulphur 365. It will be a development at some point, right? It only makes sense because we're developing all 365. So if he does a development that's right there, well, actually, let me back up. If Greg doesn't do a development at all, there's no problem, right? I don't have a problem with it. You know, he can own land and maybe he can flip it to somebody else and make money, you know, a couple years down the road. The problem is if he does a development. And so if he does a development that's more than 120 units per that D 107.1, he's going to need a secondary fire apparatus access road. And the only secondary fire apparatus access road that he would have is off of Harrington Road. And so that's the private drive. So when we spent the $400,000 on it, we essentially, if he does that development, we pay, the taxpayers paid for him to have a secondary fire apparatus access road. So again, if he doesn't do it, it's no problem. You know, I don't have a problem with it. If he flips it and doesn't do development, great. You know, but if he does a development there, in my opinion, if he voted on it, he voted on, and he may not say this, he may not say, oh, I didn't know anything because I didn't know the code or I didn't know whatever. He may plead ignorance to it. But ultimately, he voted on money to be spent, which he would potentially use in the future for that secondary access road. And then the third part of this, and this is the part where Rich came in. Rich is this guy that I met, again, door knocking, right? He's off of Harmony Church Road. He's off of Hazelnut Drive. I guess we don't want to give his private information off, but he's off of Harmony Church Road. And so I'm talking to Rich, and he goes, you know, and I did the whole video on it, right? The county started fixing his culvert. I guess there was some problem with it. Something happened. The county started fixing his thing, and they left it in the middle of it. The county did not finish his culvert. And, you know, that's in the video. There's about 10 feet left of where they needed to extend the pipe into. In my opinion, they need to put a junction box there, and then that'll go right under the road. So it's a small project. It's 10 feet of pipe. It's like a 12-inch pipe, I think, something like that, or maybe it's a 20-inch pipe. It's like one section of pipe, a junction box, and you're done. That's all it's there. And Rich has been trying for years. He's been trying for years to get this thing done. He's reached out to everyone. He reached out to, you know, the county. He reached out to engineering. He reached out to Public Works. He reached out to the city of Gainesville. Public Works.
Bro.
So essentially, Rich is trying to find who's responsible for this problem because it's in the right of way. It's not his property. And everyone tells him it's not our problem. It's somebody else. He gets the runaround from everyone he talks to. And he has all these emails, right? He has all the receipts, right? So he talked to like 4 different groups and they all told him it's somebody else. And so I go down there and I go, man, can we at least not get this thing fixed? And he goes, well, I'm going to reach out to Greg. And so he does. He has it. I have it pulled up. We'll read that too while we're looking at it since we're talking about things that actually exist. On an email dated Thursday, April 16th, 2026 at 10:47 a.m., right? So Rich writes him an email and he says, good morning, Greg. I'm hoping you can help me before you leave office. I'm trying to get a culvert in front of my house fixed by the county water department. They dug it up to clean the pipes. They left it a mess since 2022. I asked them to please add the new section of pipe and bury them, but they have ignored my request. Greg Poole, in his response, now he said at the work session meeting, he has never asked for a culvert. All right. He's never asked for one. Well, on Thursday, April 16th at 10:47 a.m., he says, I have forwarded your message to the acting county administrator and assistant administrator. I will email you back when I hear something. Rich has never heard back from Greg. So again, I don't have anything against Greg, whatever, you know, it's fine. Again, like I said, I think his heart's in the right place a lot of the times. But ultimately in this situation, he is wrong. He asked the county to help Rich, allegedly, right, to have this culvert fixed. And then also too, the problem with the secondary fire apparatus access road that we paid money for, that in my opinion, the county should not be responsible for Harrington Road. I say anybody that is watching this, Go drive down Harrington Road. It is not a road. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not an AASHTO standard road. It is a private driveway. There is no reason for us, the county taxpayers, to spend $400-something thousand on these culverts and this road paving when it's two people. There's two people down there, and then apparently, in that one situation, there's hardly anybody ever there. It's not even their primary residence.
Then they had old Oakwood Road sit there for a year, washed out.
Yeah, and Corey, Corey brought that up to me the last time we got together. He was like, you know how long old Oakwood Road was destroyed, or had cones out there and all this kind of stuff. So, if Greg's going to plead ignorance, then and he's going to say, hey, I didn't have anything to do with it, which is entirely possible, right? That's a possibility. Then if you're going to say that, and that's going to be true, then we need a better process by which we evaluate problem areas and our ability to fix them. Because in my opinion, if we're going to fix culverts, if we're going to spend $400,000 for two people on culverts and a road paving, then we dang sure better spend $50,000 and fix a culvert for an entire cul-de-sac. There's 5 houses down there where Rich is at, where every time that thing clogs up, it floods the whole cul-de-sac. I mean, there's a guy's house. Luckily, he's just above the water level because he's got kind of a brick, but he's had water in his crawl space before. It floods.
Well, they just said the other day that we got to approve this for emergencies. Is flooding houses not an emergency?
And if you want to nerd out on there too, the same section, the 503 section where it talks about fire apparatus access roads, they have to be all weather. And this was the problem in Ben Parks Road. We brought it up with there was one of the conditions we talked about, the entrance for Thumbs Up Mission on Ben Parks Road. I know this is such a weird tangent, but that road, part of it, that road is in a floodplain. So if you read that code and you interpret all weather to be all weather, true all weather, I don't know how you build a road that's in a floodplain like that, because that's not all weather. So, in a 10-year event flood, that road, that access road will be underwater. So, it's like, again, it's that idea of, how do things get put on a schedule? How do we fix them? But if somebody's really complaining, if we have a whole cul-de-sac of 5 people, 5 houses, and they're like, please help us fix this. We have a huge problem with this every time it floods. We've got to go out there and fix it. Like, that's what we do. That's where we're taking money from them, right? We're taking your property taxes. You're paying us money. We got to go fix it.
Well, and then here Greg is up on the stand. He wants to hide behind his religion, talk about how Christian he is. He's a preacher, and then he's going to sit here and lie to us about that, and then look you dead in the eye and said, I only brought that up to make a point because they're here tonight. Why don't you have the guts to say your name? Call me out, call Daryl out, call you out. And then right after that in commission time, he said, oh yeah, when you cast your vote this election, vote for the people that are from here, not people that's moved in or whatever. I mean, come on, man. Why don't you just say vote for Shannon?
Yeah, and that's, unfortunate, but I've in a weird way, I've always felt like I need to do 2 things. One, I need to give people a reason to vote for me, right? So I can't just dog Shannon. I can't just dog anybody else. Like I feel like any candidate would do a lot better to give you a reason to vote for them, right? So that's why I've never worried about what anybody else was doing. I've always felt like the race, I was just going to run like on my own, like I didn't care who was going to run. I don't really care what anybody else is really saying to a degree. Now, obviously, if it's stupid stuff, I feel like obviously you can address it. But if somebody's telling you how great they are, I don't have a reason to knock down whatever they did. That's why it was funny when it came up with the planning commission stuff. It was like that whole context was weird because here we go, and I never said anything, right? So like the whole reason why I never said anything at the start of this, and why kind of I felt like Shannon was able to kind of take credit for it. I didn't want any credit for it. Like I was really honestly worried that because I had a meeting, and I guess we'll keep people's names out of it because one of them still works for the county. But I was really honestly worried that in the meeting that I had, where I'm sitting across the hallway from the meeting room that they were all meeting in for the Open Meetings Act violations, when I saw all of them walk out on September 2nd, it was the day after Labor Day, right? So we had a meeting on Tuesday because normally they would have had it on Monday, but they had it on that Tuesday because of Labor Day. I'm in that room. I see them walk out, and really, I mentioned it to Jody, which is how, and I think she's in that affidavit, right? I never wanted anybody to know that why I was up there, what I was doing, because what I was really worried about was John and Robert getting fired. I did not want these people to get fired for them thinking that they set up this thing that they just put, Tyler just happened to be here or whatever, all this stuff. So I was really very worried on the backlash of the people that I was in that meeting with. Barry Shaw was up there. I didn't want anything to happen to these guys because like I didn't want the county administration to be like, the only reason I was up there was to basically, sink this whole thing or whatever. And it wasn't like that at all. I just happened to be there for a plans review meeting, which is why I was meeting with building inspections. But, the same thing applies to, that previous context of, like you have to, if you're going to put yourself out there, again, you still have to give a reason why, but it's got to make sense, right? You can't just like crap on somebody or just slander somebody. Like that's still not a reason to vote for you. Maybe somebody buys it, but ultimately it's not in my opinion, a solid way to run a campaign or to be a candidate. There's so many other things going on that are so much more important than where somebody was born or, somebody that has no planning experience or whatever. It's like, dude, I just wrote 15 conditions for thumbs up mission. They didn't use any of them, but I wrote 15 conditions. I've been at pretty much every voting meeting that I can. I've written plenty of write-ups for a number of applications. And so it's like that stuff to me is way more important and way more of a valid reason to vote for somebody than some of the stuff that gets put out there. So like I said, it's unfortunate, and I can't do anything other than say, hey, I don't believe this is a real reason to not vote for me. But, we'll keep plugging away. We'll do what we're doing.
Well, and I think you've done a great job of giving people a reason to vote for you, and that's why you're in the position you're in. And people's asked me when after Viral and myself was questioning Shannon on all this stuff, and basically their campaign managers, would you take up for Shannon if the scripts were flipped? Well, yeah, I would take up for him because no candidate should be vilified for a super PAC supporting them that they didn't consent to.
And that's when it comes back to knowing the whole story, right? Because if you don't know how super PACs work, then you do probably buy into that. But once you know how they work, you're like, dude, if I ever saw anybody with super PAC stuff, again, this is a conversation we just threw it away because it's like they had no choice over what it was. So if I see Shannon with a super PAC, that's why I said the signing that thing was stupid. Like I'm not going to sign their form or whatever because it doesn't matter if I sign it.
It's worth it.
If I hire, like this is what's crazy. I guess a candidate couldn't hire, but if I had some friends, right, that like wanted to hire a super PAC and then they were going to put money behind Shannon and then I was going to use that to slander Shannon with it. It's like, dude, that's why it doesn't matter because they can literally say anything they want about you and they don't have to run it by you and they don't even want to talk to you. So it's like, you can't trust what this stuff is going to be. And you certainly can't sign something and says, well, I'm not going to take their money. A, you didn't take their money, but B, you don't have any control.
Especially with the super PACs, and we didn't bring it up before, everything that was on those flyers for you and Kathy, they got off of y'all's personal websites and Facebook pages and stuff. They literally had to stalk y'all to get y'all's information. I mean, and I took up for Kathy. I said, hell, she shouldn't be vilified for this and that, and that's enough about this stuff. And I wish it'd go back to just Shannon's qualifications against your qualifications.
Yeah, and like you said, there's certainly reasons out there. If you're a District 1 voter, there's certainly reasons to not vote for Kathy. If you feel some kind of way on stuff, obviously. But yeah, like you said, I mean, those are vastly more important than a flyer that went out or like super PAC money. Just from the like what you said alone, which is if there's valid concerns there, bring those up. There's not anything from something that has no control over that's worth bringing up. It's the same thing as like, I'm born in California. I had the same control over the super PAC as where I was born, right? Like it's stuff that doesn't matter. And it's like, okay, well, that sounds good. But again, it only sounds good if you know half the truth.
Well, you moved here when you was like 12, 13 years old? You've been here since what, you was 12, 13?
I'll say that again.
You've been in Georgia since you were what, 12, 13 years old?
5.
Oh, since you was 5 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically you're a freaking Georgian.
I'll take it.
No, but I'm for real. I mean, you can't help, that's just craziness, And yeah. I just hope people see through the BS.
I can't wait for mailers to go out that I'm not even from this country.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you run, Vero, I guess you get to see all this stupid stuff ahead of time, so you know what to expect.
Yeah, no, this is been an eye-opening viewpoint. Let's just put it like that. You know, I don't know. I was looking at I was watching Billy last night on the live stream, and I can't imagine he's gonna run again. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But the dude's old. I would hope he's gonna kind of like ride off into the sunset also.
I think he knows people are getting tired of his BS, but
yeah, especially with the slap in the faces of these appointments, and the one that he got kind of called out on last night didn't do it, but the Bradley Dunkel one, and sitting out of all the meetings during suspending / firing the commissioners.
And we know he said off the record, I'm not being a part of firing my friends.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw did a Google search yesterday. I was trying to put together a little short video, but Billy wins re-election in 2008. You know, he was partying with, and it's like these younger guys, and it's him and Steve Gilliam in the paper. And I was just like, oh, look at Steve. I love Steve, man. Steve's helped me out a ton with our data center stuff with the city of Gainesville. Personally, I think he's a great person. Again, great people. Billy's probably a great guy too, with everything he's involved in and stuff. But you're lining your pockets. Like we're not stupid, you know.
Yeah.
Like we know what you're doing. So
that's the hard part with that. Like it's like we talked about earlier, right? You can have good people but bad votes, and then you can have, by the same inverse, right? You can have good votes but bad people. So it's like, you know, that is such a part of that where like you have to disassociate that. And actually, you know, you tied in very well with what I would say, you know, if I'm sitting in the seat here in January, that conversation, not only with Kathy and Jeff, but then also with Billy too, like I would say, like, what do you guys want your legacy to be? Like, do you guys want the end of your term where everybody hates you and you literally have to like go out in the middle of the night because you're going to get beat up in the parking lot because you piss off so many people? Like, are you guys not thinking about what you guys, like, how you want to be remembered in your capacity as commissioner? So, I mean, I feel like that's something I would really want to ask of them, and really kind of understand, again, what their heart is and why they're doing it. But like, I just, for the life of me, I can't see why they do what they do sometimes. But
I think it's money drives a lot of people, and money helps people really not care about their legacy.
Yep.
As long as I get mine.
Well, and that's one reason Steve Galey, he term limited himself. He would have he'd still be on the commission if he wanted to be. He said, look, we've got the commission in a great spot. You know, the county's in a great spot. It's time for me to go. You know, and we need, I wish more people were like that. Serve you 2 or 3 terms or whatever, and then just carry on, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's when your focus is your role is temporary, and you're a steward of that, right? So like I think that's where it comes back into the attitude that you have towards it. Again, expiration dates, and I think we talked about this last time. My favorite movie quote ever is like, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, and
it's such a great quote, even though it's from a Batman movie, but it's such a great quote. But then I also think too, like, man, you were just talking about it here for a second. I like drew a blank on it because I was out ahead of myself. See if I can. Yeah, maybe it'll come back to me. There was another point I was going to make after that, but I forgot it.
I wanted to ask you. So you read through some of the revisions and whatnot that are on this UDC right now. Me and you talked about it a little bit, but the whole data center thing. Did you get any update on that from them as far as like, hey, is the minimum requirement going to be 20,000 square feet?
No, I haven't heard back anything specifically on any of the stuff that I brought up. Now I personally have not submitted anything in writing yet. I haven't really had time to do it, unfortunately. I've read through all the ordinances, and then I've had 2 people reach out to me and send me their copy of an ordinance just to look it over. So I'm like, okay, so I've spent a lot of time specifically in the data center one. And that I do wholeheartedly agree that we need a small version of that. The argument against data centers is that they are always, kind of resource hogs. So it's like, if you have a small model that essentially takes up almost nothing, and you would never even notice it, it just looks like a generic metal building, and that's pretty much it. I think people might be more palatable to a data center model that looked like that, instead of we're going to do this on 100 acres and we're going to have the giant generators and we're going to
just a massive industrial operation, essentially.
So hopefully there's an avenue forward for that. We won't probably know. I mean, obviously we could talk to Katie. Katie is really kind of spearheading, and it obviously makes sense. She's planning director. But Katie's really spearheading the, as far as I know, the revisions to what they put out there. And so when I talked to Katie Wednesday, she was like, "Hey, send me everything that you've got." And actually, oddly enough, I've got a friend of mine that works for an engineering company, and I reached out to him because they do data center stuff as well. And I said, "Hey, man, whatever information that you've got and whatever you want to send to Hall County government, do it, because we're looking at revising our ordinance." So, I reached out to him and said, if there's something in there that you feel like is because I would think it's from the ask side, because I read some of the stuff where it's like, they want 1,000-foot setbacks and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's not realistic. But some of the stuff from the decibel meter reading, right? So like if we're doing decibel meter readings at the property line, like sure, like what's a realistic number for that? What has passed in other municipalities? So I think the more information, and I greatly appreciate Katie for this. I'm going to shout out, Katie Ahmed. She's definitely of the same opinion, which is you can't have too much information. So like, send me everything. So like, send me the stuff from the engineering side of it. Send me the stuff from the, I can't remember we talked about this. I know Chris and I think we've talked about this. The idea that you could have a reactor, a small modular reactor in a data center powering the data center, instead of taking power basically away from the grid, it would power itself. So, if that's on the radar and they're building one, they're definitely building a small modular reactor. And was it Oak Island Laboratory? What's the one in Tennessee? Yeah. So whatever the Oak one is, Oak Island, I think. So they're doing a working model of that. So, I mean, it's stuff on the future, right? So if you're planning 3 years out, or if you're planning 20 years out, yeah, it's nice to have that stuff kind of, you kind of already know what's going to be on the horizon, because you're aware of what's going on. So, I think, from all the liquid, I think it's liquid to chip, I think stuff, right, is what kind of the current model of cooling is. So we've gone away from evaporative. And so, it's like the liquid, I think it's either to chip or direct to chip, something like that. But, from the cooling side of it, from the power side of it, how do you get out in front of those things? Well, the only way you can do that is by being informed, right? So you need everyone that has any kind of information on that. Send me whatever you got. So, I do feel like this time around, the county is wanting to be more proactive. They want to hear from people this time around. They're trying to be upfront about it. But again, it's a conversation from last time. If you have a populace that's generally ignorant of the comprehensive plan, you're still not going to get a lot of feedback, because they just don't know why it's important.
Well, they're wanting to believe the crap from, and it's these anti-data center groups that bring up stuff that was only relevant to the first data centers ever built. They don't figure in that technology is so much better than the ones they built 20 years ago.
And it's the same thing on the nuclear side. I've seen, all the stuff where it's like, Fukushima or whatever, okay, not only was that a long time ago, but, the designs where they've had problems with melting down have been 60, 70-year-old designs. Like where we're at now with like breeder reactors, the fluoride high, like the molten salt, like high temperature reactors, like that technology has come so far that if you're not aware of what's going on currently, like you're basically making decisions off of 56-year-old data. So like you really need to be aware of what's currently happening, what's being proposed. So yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of geek out on the data center stuff. It's fascinating. I mean, that's really kind of, people are gonna be like, he's pro data center or whatever. I'm just pro the right answer, right? So I'm not pro anything. I'm just pro, if it's going to be there, it needs to make sense. It needs to be the best we can do it. So if it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, then deny it. Like I'm not pro or against anything. I'm just pro. It needs to be the best application for Hall County. It doesn't need to be anything other than that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've heard a lot of people say that they didn't vote for you because you were anti-spliced. And I said, no, he's not anti-spliced. He just wants it to be implemented the correct way, and we need to make that clear. You're not anti-spliced.
Well, I think you have maybe like somebody from Lula saying something like that, because we did kind of go in. Well, me personally, I was like, why should Lula even get a dime if they're not even contributing that much to it and whatnot?
Yeah, I know the exact thread because I remember you and I, and then there was, two other people. I guess we don't need to bring their names in.
Yeah. I think it was like a mayor or councilman of Lula too that got involved in that conversation. He was like, how dare you say something about Lula? I was like, bro, relax. I'm just looking at the numbers and I'm trying to understand it myself at this point.
Yeah, it was a guy on the city council, but
Chris?
Maybe. But the idea is it's not like we're pro doing the best thing the best way. So like whatever that looks like, if that's through the SPLOS model, then great. But my problem has always been we can do the SPLOS model better. Like it's not that I'm anti-sale. I'm certainly not anti-sales tax by any means. I think the sales tax is I'm on the board of I think the sales tax is equally applied to everyone, right? So everyone is paying in sales tax because you got to buy stuff. So like I think sales tax is a great model for things. Is it the answer for everything? Maybe not, but it's a great model for most things. But the end result of that is we need to do anything that we do. We have to do it the best of our ability. So we have to look at the SPLOS model. Can we do it better? Can we be more like communicative on all the things we're doing? Can we get more feedback? Absolutely. Can we go away from a model where we know the end number and then that way we have the 15 or 20% that's just trash at the end of this thing? Hopefully we can, right? So like it's not anti anything really. It's we need to evaluate everything that we're doing and we need to ask the question of can we do it better than how we're currently doing it?
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up here, is there anything specifically you want that we hadn't touched on that you want to get out there?
I don't think so. I mean, I just, I hope that I hope through, your guys' efforts, through the other groups that are out there, on social media and all that stuff, that we can at least get some decent feedback. Like I said, hopefully, my goal in doing any of this stuff, not only is it to present my side of it, but I hope that through the engagement, through North Georgia Advocate and, like I said, any of the other groups that are online, that we continually raise the bar for not only accountability, which
Oh no, closing statements.
Yeah, that we increase the engagement, that we're trying to, again, we're trying to make government better, right? Like if government's a necessary evil, and I do agree with you, Daryl, I want the smallest government that can do the job generally, right? So like, if whatever services you have to have, whatever smallest government is that's capable of doing that is generally the best answer. And so it's like, if it's a necessary evil and you're going to take property taxes or you're going to take sales taxes, we need the accountability. We need them to be as efficient as possible. We need that oversight. And the only way that it happens is through, in my opinion right now, through kind of the social media lens. So, you guys, I don't really have anything. I just, always very appreciative. I always thank you guys for any of the time that you allow me to speak. And I, like I said, I'm very appreciative of all the work that you guys do, the work that you guys continue to do. I mean, hopefully, I've kind of thought about this too. I don't know if you guys want to, but there's a couple people, and this is maybe not necessarily a topic for this time. It can always be something off air. But, if you guys want to interview some state level people, I do know a couple of those. And so, they would love to have this context, so, I wish the best for you guys. I hope it only grows. And, I think that we. I think, sorry, breaking up there. But I think we can get some state stuff in here too. And there's an opportunity there for accountability at the state level.
Yeah, I'm all for state people. I'm anybody that affects us locally, I'm all for it.
Yep.
If anybody you want on, just let them know and hook it up. We'll do our best to make it happen. Daryl, You got anything else?
No, man. I just want to say congrats on getting this far, at least being in the runoff, spending under $2,500. That speaks a lot of volume. I think somebody like me that's aspiring potentially to make a run in a couple of years. It just kind of shows me that I don't have to spend money. The work and just going out there and meeting people and just like you. Hey, this is what I stand for. I'd love to have your vote kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like, I think this country has gone into a shithole with the with politics as a whole and just running smear campaigns, and that's like the only way you can win, or that's the only way you can run a campaign, is just kind of stupid in my opinion. So I don't even vote when it comes to our governor race and state level races and whatnot, because there's I'm tired of having to choose between the lesser of two evils. So kind of why I stayed away from the District 1 endorsement. I know Chris endorsed Mark, Steven endorsed Mark and whatnot, but to me it's still like you're still running smear campaigns and just talking shit about the other person instead of actually talking about the fact that, hey, this is why you should vote for me. So kudos to you for running a clean campaign, not talking or smearing the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like kudos to you, man. I hope you win the runoff. I wish I was getting paid to support you, because I'm doing a lot of supporting on social media. But I'm happy to do it. Just out of the fact that, hey, I can get behind you and Susan too. Let me not leave Susan out. People like you that are running with low budget campaigns and you're standing up for the right things. I can get behind, like, the whatever I can do to help. And if I don't have to give money to you, but I can put a little bit of time behind your campaign a little bit and just at least defend you when it comes. And I'm happy to do it, just so you know. We lost him.
Yeah. Oh, hey, what I was going to say though too is, like, I think honestly that's why, like I said before, I didn't know what I was going to spend money on, because honestly I feel like people in defense of somebody that they like agree with or are wanting to see in there is worth more than money. Like, I honestly feel like a defense on, if it's Facebook or whatever social media, like that, you couldn't pay that. Like that is something that no amount of money is going to get you, where you have people that actually believe in what you're trying to do. And so that's why I was like, I didn't really felt like I needed any money or was going to spend anything on it, because it was like my campaign is just the message. Like, if it's not me, then somebody else, great. But it's the message of, we have to take back Hall County government, and we have to be involved, and we have to do this stuff. And I was thinking too, when we had a group text message. So it was me, Shiv, John Batchelor, Corey, Susan, myself. And I'll put this little piece out there. I don't think anybody has ever talked about this in this sense here, but so we did have a group text, right? And I think you guys had all of us, I think, actually, right? So the five of us, I'm pretty sure you guys had, yeah. And so one of the last texts that I had in there, because this was post election day, and of course, Shiv and John and Corey didn't make it, and obviously there was a lot of like, hey, thank you guys for everything that you've done, a lot of that stuff. And what I wrote back to all of them was, I was like, I looked at all of us the same way. And I was asked very early on who my target market was. And I thought that at one point I was like, okay, I think it's this. But ultimately what I figured out was my target market was anybody that was informed. Like, if you wanted to know what was going on and you wanted to like actually understand how it works, like, that was my target market. That was the people that I identified with and talked to. And I told all them the same thing. I was like, dude, John, for sure. I mean, John had such a better race than Inez. John, Corey, I felt like Corey's the best candidate. Susan's the best candidate. I think Shiv, his heart was in the right place. He had an uphill battle, obviously, with an incumbent. But I was like, I think of all of you guys in the same context, which is all of our target markets, the five of us, were just the people that wanted to be informed. It was the people that wanted to know why things were messed up. They'd seen problems. They knew what was going on, but it was the why. Why is this messed up? Why is this happening? Why are we continuing to see these problems? And so, that's why, again, to you, Vero, when you run, we have to have people that want to do the right thing. And you talked about the lesser of two evils. Well, the only time you get the lesser two of evils is that you have evil people running, right? If you don't have somebody that's good and wants to do the right thing and we're running, you never have an option for that.
Right.
You have to have people that are going to step up, because most people don't want to run. They're like, oh, I don't have the time, or, they're going to like slander me or whatever. It's like, well, if you don't have anybody running that's worth voting for, you're going to get left with trash. So, you have to have people that are willing to step up and do it.
Right. And we appreciate everything you've been doing, and that's why we stick behind you. You're genuine. You know, you try to be truthful and upfront with everybody, and you come across as you're caring. I mean, and it shows in everything that you do. I mean, and you put in a lot of work, and I hope it pays off on the 16th. You know, we really do. We need somebody like you on the council, on the commission.
Well, I'm gonna go to the beach like Steve if I win. Steve's like always. He's like, I'm gonna go on vacation. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great plan, honestly, because this campaigning stuff is just it's all day, every day.
Yeah, you need
I'm,
break,
I'm ready
man.
for a vacation at this point.
Yep, no doubt. Well, we appreciate everything, Tyler. And if anytime you want to come back on, you're more than welcome. And hopefully we'll have you on right after the 16th, and we'll be celebrating a victory.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Well, thank y'all for listening, and we will have this out in a little bit, and we'll have another show next week. All right. Thanks, Tyler and Bill. Damn. There we go.